Hey guys, tonight we slip under the rough homespun blankets of a world before electric lights, foam mattresses, or even the basic expectation of sleeping alone. The medieval night is stretching out before you, flickering with tallow candles, echoing with the far-off clatter of hooves, and filled with the soft shuffle of bodies, searching for a patch of warmth. Let's be honest, if you crave personal space, you probably won't survive this century. The idea of a private bed is almost laughably modern, and tonight you'll see just how much intimacy, chosen or not, wants to find a single night's rest. So before we go any further, if this quiet space makes you feel even a little less alone, you can like the video and subscribe, but only if it feels right to your heart. And hey, I'd love to know where you're listening from. Are you lying awake in a quiet room at 2 a.m.? Or maybe starting your day in a rainy city, eyes still heavy? Drop your time and place in the comments. Let's remind each other we're not alone out here. Now dim the lights, let your shoulders relax, and let's begin tonight's slow, strange journey together here on Timeless Sleep. The fire has been banked for the night, the smoke drifting slowly up through a hole in the roof. You step quietly into the main living space, a single room, most likely if you're in a peasant's cottage, but even in a bustling merchant's townhouse, sleeping arrangements are rarely private. The first thing you notice is the sheer number of bodies: brothers, sisters, parents, grandparents, maybe a couple of cousins or visiting neighbors, all squeezed together across beds, pallets, and piles of straw. You can practically count the heartbeat. It's not simply that space is at a premium, though it certainly is in cramped cottages with little more than a single bed and a patch of rushes. It's the way life itself is layered here, everyone pressed close not only for warmth but for safety. In the Middle Ages, night brought dangers, fires, thieves, wolves, and perhaps worst of all, the cold. There's no central heating, and the night air creeping through cracks in the timber can chill you to the bone. So you burrow in, grateful for every warm body, human or otherwise, beside you. Sleep itself, you realize, is a communal act. This is not the stuff of dainty fairy tales, but something far more robust, more honest, and often less comfortable. The bed might be nothing more than a wooden frame strung with ropes creaking under the weight of 2 or 3 people. If you're less fortunate, you get the floor sometimes. A simple mat of straw is all that separates you from the hard earth. It is a world without memory foam, and restful is a generous word for what most people experience each night. A joke is told as you settle in about the old farmer who always found his boots missing come morning. The culprit? His youngest son, who'd stick his cold feet in them to warm up, and then fall asleep, tangled in laces and dreams. There's laughter, but it's the kind that bubbles up in the dark, comforting and familiar. One quirky custom: some families keep a single candle burning all night, not for light, but to ward off evil spirits. Historians still argue whether this was superstition or simply an excuse to peek at the cheese when nobody was looking. As you drift into a doze, you're nudged awake by the weight of a cat, leaping up to claim a corner of the bed. Animals are part of this crowd too. Chickens sometimes roost in the rafters. The family pig might be snoring under the bed. The line between people and livestock blurs at night, not out of carelessness, but necessity. Every warm body helps. There's an odd intimacy to this arrangement. You know the shape of your sister's foot pressing into your calf, the way your father snores when he's had too much ale, the soft whisper of your mother's prayers as she folds her hands beneath her cheek. These small private moments are public here, woven into the fabric of nightly life. But the crowding isn't always voluntary. You remember hearing tales about noble families with enormous 4-poster beds, but even in the castles it wasn't rare for several people to share a bed. Servants might sleep at the foot, and sometimes visiting guests were tucked in too. The bed became its own little world, defined by the politics of hierarchy and hospitality. Once, you hear, a visiting merchant was so surprised to be invited into his host's bed that he spent the entire night awake, convinced it was a strange joke or some kind of test. By morning, he'd learned what you already know. In the Middle Ages, sharing a bed wasn't just normal, it was expected, Of course, not everyone is happy about the arrangement. Children squabble over who gets to sleep by the wall, the warm spot, while the unlucky ones end up exposed to chilly drafts. Your younger brother fidgets, muttering in his sleep and stealing the covers. Your grandmother grumbles, elbowing you for hogging the straw. It's chaos, but a familiar nightly chaos. The nights are long and sometimes broken by interruptions. Someone stirs for a drink of water or to relieve themselves in a chamber pot set discreetly in a corner. You try to ignore the sounds, though you secretly hope you're not the next one to step in something unpleasant come morning. It's a far cry from the silence of modern bedrooms, but you find, in a way, that this constant shuffle and murmur is oddly soothing. There's a rhythm to it. The deep breaths, the occasional cough, the symphony of bodies settling and resettling. No one expects silence. It would be unnerving. Instead, you learn to sleep through a symphony of snores and whispers. Sometimes secrets are shared in the darkness, voices barely louder than a breath. Your older sister confides her hopes. Your father shares a story from his youth. Your mother hums a lullaby from her own childhood. The bed, you realize, isn't just for sleeping. It's a place where family life happens, where stories are passed down, where bonds are quietly reinforced. Yet not every night is peaceful. There are fights too, a shove, a harsh word, a foot kicked in frustration. But come morning, everyone emerges together, rumpled and blinking, ready to start the day. There's a strange democracy in the medieval bed. Everyone from the lord to the labourer wakes with straw in their hair and the marks of a restless night. You think back to a tale told by a neighbour. His entire family once had to sleep in the barn for a week, after the house flooded. The cows, he said, made excellent bedfellows, but the rooster's early wake-up calls were less appreciated. Historians still argue whether such stories are exaggerated, but the truth is, necessity made for strange sleeping arrangements. The reality of medieval sleeping partners isn't just about physical closeness. It's about a kind of forced community, an enforced vulnerability that's rare in the modern world. Privacy is almost non-existent. Even secrets are shared, willingly or not. Yet in this crowded space you find a different kind of comfort. Alone, the night would be cold, frightening, and long. Together, even the most restless night becomes bearable. As the first hint of dawn seeps in, the bed stirs to life. People stretch, rub their eyes, complain about sore backs and missing blankets. Someone tells a joke about dreaming of a bed with no siblings in it. Everyone laughs, knowing it's only a dream. You roll out of bed, feet hitting the cold floor, and for a moment you marvel at the resilience of those who live this way every day. Maybe tonight you'll claim the warm spot by the wall, or maybe not. After all, in the medieval world, sleep isn't a solitary journey. It's a nightly migration, a ritual of togetherness and survival. And so, as you dust off the straw and greet the morning, you realize you've survived another night packed like sardines, a little closer to your family, and perhaps just a little more grateful for the luxury of a bed to yourself. Curtains pulled shut, the world falls away at least. That's how it might seem for a fleeting moment as you step softly into the upper chambers of a medieval manor or castle. Tonight you find yourself in the realm of the wealthy, drifting past the heavy oak doors and into the hush of noble bedrooms. Here you'd expect privacy, dignity, and a soft feather bed set apart from the bustle of common life. But as you slip past the thick tapestries, it becomes clear luxury in the Middle Ages had its own rules, and secrets could hide as easily as silver spoons. The first thing that strikes you is the bed itself, massive, ornately carved, and draped in curtains, so thick they swallow the flicker of candlelight. Some are decorated with coats of arms, intricate embroidery, or even gold thread. If you come from the fields below, the sight alone is enough to convince you these must be the most restful places in the world. Yet as you nestle in, you realize comfort is only part of the story. In noble houses, beds serve many masters. These are not just places to sleep, but stages for negotiation, politics, gossip, and intrigue. It's not uncommon for several people to share a bed, a lord and his lady, yes, but also favoured servants, trusted advisors, or children, sometimes all at once. In the glow of the rushlight, you might overhear whispered strategy about land, marriage, or inheritance. In the deep of night, pillows become confessionals, and every shifting shadow might hint at rivalry or secret alliance. You notice a curious tradition. Nobles rarely sleep entirely alone. It's said that even kings would share their beds with companions, not for romance, but for warmth, protection, or simple custom. The courtier who is chosen to sleep at the king's feet may consider it an honor, but the job can be risky. One wrong word, and you could find yourself dismissed from both bed and favor. Historians still argue whether these bedfellows were chosen out of trust, necessity, or the ever-present fear of assassination. There's a practical element too. The cold stone walls of a castle or manor are no match for a medieval winter, even with tapestries hung thick as insulation and braziers glowing low. Draughts seep in from every crack. Shared beds and heavy curtains are not only marks of status, but essential defenses against the chill. Some families even keep hot bricks wrapped in cloth at the foot of the bed, hoping to fend off the night's bite. But warmth isn't the only concern. Behind those lush curtains, status is on full display. The closer you are allowed to the lord or lady, the more important you are. At court, who sleeps where, and with whom can determine the flow of gossip, influence, and favour. It's a strange power, this business of sleeping partners. Sometimes it's a privilege, sometimes a punishment. A noblewoman might insist her daughter sleep at her side for safety, or a duke might exile a troublesome cousin to a lumpy pallet in the corner. There's a story of a baron who was so notorious for snoring that he was given a bedchamber all his own, but even then his servants had to sleep in adjoining rooms, just in case. Tonight, as you settle onto the feather bed, you find yourself listening. The tapestries muffle the sound, but the room is never truly silent. Servants pass by, attending to their master's every whim, fetching water, stoking the fire, keeping a careful eye on who enters and leaves. There's an art to knowing when to speak and when to pretend to sleep. Sometimes the most important conversations happen in the dim half-light between waking and dreaming. There are jokes among the staff. Mind you don't talk in your sleep, or you might wake up in the stables. Another favourite, careful what you whisper at night. The bedposts have ears. Beneath the jokes a wary respect for the power that lingers in these rooms. It wasn't all comfort, either. Even with curtains drawn, a bed might play host to more than just people. The rich could afford fancy bedding, but they could not always avoid bedbugs or lice. The fabric and straw of even the most elaborate mattress could hide tiny invaders. And in the morning you might find yourself scratching at unseen itches, wondering if the court physician's herbal wash will do any good this time. Stories pass between the servants. One maid claims to have seen the ghost of a former mistress at the foot of the bed. Another insists the lord's chamber is cursed because of a broken betrothal. Historians still argue whether that lady died of a broken heart or something nastier in her wine. They whisper, eyes wide, voices low. You're not just surrounded by the living, you realize, but by the presence of all who've slept here before. The creak of the bed frame, the flutter of curtains, the faintest sigh from a restless sleeper. These are the nightly companions of the privileged, along with all their hopes and jealousies. Sometimes, late at night, the children of the house sneak in, too frightened by a dream or a storm to sleep alone. There's a certain comfort in knowing that even the wealthiest must deal with a little one wedged between them and a spouse, knees jabbing in all directions. Some parents send them away, others accept it, rolling over with a sigh, knowing this too is part of family life. And then there are the guests. Hospitality is serious business in the Middle Ages, especially among the upper class. A visiting knight or bishop might be given the finest chamber available, sometimes even a space in the family bed if relations are especially close or the house is especially crowded. There are stories of noble feasts ending with half the guests sprawled in whatever beds or benches could be found, the lines between family, friend and stranger blurred by the late hour and the need for warmth. Still, Privacy is a rare and precious thing. Even with the curtains drawn, you are always aware of who shares your space and who might be listening from just beyond the velvet folds. In the morning, as the first light filters through the cracks in the shutters, servants enter to help their masters dress, bringing basins of water, fresh linens, or if you're very lucky, a cup of spiced wine to chase away the chill. The ritual of rising is almost as communal as the act of sleeping. Yet for all its luxury, the noble bedroom is not immune to tragedy or scandal. There are tales of secrets whispered in the night that led to duels at dawn, of marriages made and broken behind heavy curtains, of treasures stolen by trusted servants who vanished before sunrise. One court chronicler joked that a man's fortune could change with the company he kept in bed, and the truth was often stranger than fiction. Among the quirkiest customs, some noble families believed that placing certain herbs or charms under the pillow could ward off nightmares or even attract good fortune. Lavender, rosemary, and a touch of salt might be tucked under the sheets, though historians still argue whether these worked or whether they were simply a way to sweeten the scent of straw and keep away pests. As you lie there, feeling the gentle pressure of the featherbed beneath you and the weight of history above, you realize that sleep in the Middle Ages was never just about closing your eyes. It was about trust, alliances, and the fragile boundary between public and private life. Every night was a negotiation, and every morning brought its own set of consequences. Still, even the grandest chambers couldn't shield their occupants from the realities of medieval life. Illness, war, and intrigue all found their way through stone walls and velvet curtains alike. If anything, sharing a bed with others became a way to survive not only the cold but the loneliness and uncertainty of a world that was always changing. As you drift towards sleep, you catch the sound of laughter from a neighboring room, the soft footsteps of a servant on the stairs, the distant clang of the castle gate closing for the night. The noble bedroom may be grand, but its dreams and its dramas are just as tangled as any peasant's straw mat below. And as you let your eyes close, feeling the hush settle around you, you realize that here too sleep is a shared story, a tapestry woven from secrets, whispers, and the soft, restless breaths of those lying close beside you. The hearth has gone out, leaving a faint smell of charred wood in the little house. A single curl of moonlight presses through the thatched roof, falling on a jumble of shapes and limbs tangled on beds, straw mats, and even the worn planks of the floor. No grand canopies or feather beds here, only the simple weight of bodies, the scratch of rough wool, and the slow communal surrender to the night. Peasant homes, more often than not, are one-room affairs, and when the sun sets, every inch of space is precious. For most, sleep means sharing, whether you want to or not. In many ways it's the original sleepover, except this one never ends. Your family is here, parents, siblings, sometimes grandparents, and maybe a neighbor or two who needs shelter for the night. During harvest or at festival times, the house might even squeeze in traveling kin, farm hands, or a friend down on their luck. Sometimes, a dog curls up at your feet, a cat wedges itself against your side, and a hen, escaped from her roost, may try to claim a pillow. You roll your eyes, but even you admit it's warmer this way. The beds themselves are humble, wooden frames with sagging ropes, or even just a pile of straw, reeds, or bracken spread across the floor, and topped with a faded blanket. At the day's end, the straw smells fresh, like a memory of the sun, but by morning it's already gone flat beneath. So many tossing, turning bodies. The lucky ones have a mattress stuffed with straw, wool, or even old rags. But luck is a rare thing for a medieval peasant. Everyone piles in, sometimes crosswise to make the most of the space. If you're the youngest, you'll likely be sent to the edge closest to the cold wall, shivering, counting breaths and toes. The warm spot is a prize fiercely fought over, a sibling sandwich tucked between older bodies that radiate heat like living bricks. Sometimes you bribe your way in with promises, secrets, or even chores for the next day. Whispers and giggles drift across the room as you all settle. Someone makes a joke about old Master Hob, who once rolled off the edge and landed straight in the dog's bowl. There's laughter, muffled to avoid waking the littlest ones. Even in the midst of daily hardships, humor softens the night. These moments, half awake and half asleep, are when stories get swapped, riddles are told, and sometimes when the wind howls too fiercely outside, fears are quietly confessed and soothed away by the soft warmth of company. Sometimes the sleep is less restful. The close quarters mean every movement is felt and heard. The sharp kick of a restless sibling, the cold feet of your father pressing against your leg, the groan of your grandmother as she tries to find a spot that doesn't ache. The baby fusses, and his mother lying beside you soothes him with gentle shushing and a lullaby barely above a whisper. Now and then, an older sibling will try to sneak a little time by the dying embers of the fire, just for a moment's solitude. But soon enough, the cold drives them back to the heap, complaining about the draft as they wedge themselves back into the pile. You begin to notice the way nighttime magnifies every sound: the settling house, the squeak of a mouse in the rafters, the gentle tap of rain against the shutters, and occasionally the bark of a dog or the distant howl of something wild. Some nights, a neighbor's shout or the crash of something outside jolts everyone awake. For a moment, fear ripples through the room. Was that a thief or just a branch? You listen, hearts racing together, until the house falls quiet again. In a world without locks or alarms, the best security is simply being together. Even the family dog, curled at the door, is both guardian and companion. There's little privacy. Sometimes you wish for it, especially when a sibling won't stop squirming, or your father's snoring shakes the rafters. But in truth, most nights, the constant presence of others is a comfort. Loneliness is a luxury few can afford. One of the quirkiest nightly traditions is the nightshirt shuffle, a mad scramble as everyone tries to pull on whatever nightclothes are available before the blankets are claimed by someone faster. These nightshirts, often handed down and patched a dozen times, are more symbolic than useful. They're barely more than long shirts, but they do their best to keep out the chill. It's not just people who fill the house at night. Livestock, too, have their place. In the coldest months, animals may be brought inside, not out of affection, but to keep them and their valuable warmth close. The cow is led to a corner, sheep huddle nearby, and sometimes a pig makes a bed of straw by the door. It's noisy, sometimes smelly, and utterly normal. There's an old story repeated by many. If you wake in the middle of the night and find the pig in your spot, it's best to just let it be. Historians still argue whether that custom was about kindness, laziness, or simply not wanting to wrestle a pig in the dark. As dawn approaches, sleep grows lighter. Someone wakes early to stoke the fire, another starts to prepare the morning's porridge. People stir, stretch, and grumble, comparing notes on the night's rest. You stole all the covers. Your elbow was in my face. The dog bit my toe again. It's a chorus as regular as the rooster's crow. Some nights are harder than others. If someone is ill, the entire sleeping arrangement might shift. The sick are placed closest to the fire, with others hovering nearby to help or simply keep watch. Everyone shares in the discomfort, aches, coughs, and the ever-present fear of contagion. The reality of medieval illness is never far away, and even sleep is shadowed by worry. And yet, life continues. Even the most restless night ends with laughter and shared bread in the morning. Over time, you become an expert at fitting yourself into the smallest space, claiming a sliver of blanket, dodging the worst of the draft, and ignoring the loudest of snores. There are moments rare but cherished when someone rises in the night and finds the world outside painted silver with frost, or glowing blue beneath a full moon. On those nights, a few bold souls might sneak outside, pulling cloaks around themselves to watch the stars, savoring the brief illusion of solitude before returning to the embrace of the sleeping pile. One odd tale lingers in the village: a traveling peddler who claimed he could tell fortunes by how people arranged themselves in bed. The one by the door is destined for adventure, he'd say, the one by the wall for wisdom. No one really believed him, but for weeks after, children would squabble for the doorside spot, hoping for some future glory. Still, most nights end as they begin. a crowd of weary bodies tangled together in a patchwork of kinship and necessity. Here, sleep is not just about rest, it's about being together in a world that is often unpredictable and harsh. Alone, the night might feel endless. Together it passes in a noisy, restless, sometimes comforting jumble, even when the day's work is long and the world outside feels vast and uncertain. These humble nights in a crowded cottage leave you with a lesson, as warm as any blanket. In the darkest hours, company is everything, even if it means waking up with straw in your hair and a chicken roosting on your pillow. A muddy lantern swings in your hand as you make your way down the cobbled road, the night air heavy with mist and the faint promise of trouble. Tonight you aren't in your own bed, or even your neighbour's crowded cottage. You're a traveller, a stranger, seeking a roof and a little warmth wherever you can. And in the Middle Ages that means stepping inside one of the era's most peculiar institutions, the tavern or inn, where sleep is for sale, but privacy is not on the menu. The wooden door creaks open on squeaky hinges, and you're greeted by the mingled smells of spilled ale, old wood, wet wool, and the ever-present tang of unwashed humanity. The tap room is thick with laughter, curses, and the rattle of dice, but you're too tired to care about the commotion. Your only goal tonight is to find a patch of straw, or, if fortune is especially kind, a place in a shared bed. You step over a dozing dog, duck under a low beam, and approach the innkeeper, who looks you over with a weary eye. Your only goal tonight is to find a patch of straw, or, if fortune is especially kind, a place in a shared bed. You step over a dozing dog, duck under a low beam, and approach the innkeeper, who looks you over with a weary eye. "How many in your party?" he asks, already grabbing a tallow candle. You answer, but the number hardly matters. At this hour, and at your price, you'll sleep wherever there's room. The inn's sleeping arrangements are a far cry from the privacy of modern hotels. Instead of single rooms and soft pillows, you find an open dormitory, a draughty loft above the tavern, or a long wooden bench along the wall. Beds, if there are any, are narrow, sagging, and usually shared. Even the most expensive rooms are rarely for one person alone. Strangers become bedfellows out of necessity and economy. Historians still argue whether most travellers resign themselves to this with good cheer or merely grim endurance. You follow the innkeeper up a narrow staircase, the treads worn smooth by 1,000 tired feet. Upstairs, bodies are already sprawled on pallets, benches, or simply the floor. Merchants with heavy purses tucked under their pillows, pilgrims in dusty cloaks, farmhands and tinkers, all jumbled together like spoons in a drawer. A single candle throws giant shadows on the ceiling, flickering as a draught slips through a cracked shutter. You're shown a space, half a straw mattress, shared with a stranger already snoring on the far side. There's no point in arguing. You lower yourself gingerly onto the bed, careful not to jostle your new companion, and clutch your bag close to your chest. You might sleep with your boots on, just in case. The fear of theft is real, and there are stories of guests who've woken up lighter of purse or minus a cloak or two. It's a risk you accept for a roof and the promise of warmth. As the room settles, conversation continues in low voices. Some travellers swap stories, boasts of journeys survived, bargains struck, or dangers narrowly avoided. A grizzled old man on the next pallet claims he once shared a bed with a bishop and a highwayman on the same night. The bishop snored like the devil, and the highwayman pinched my flask, he grumbles, earning a round of tired laughter. There are jokes, of course. What do you call 3 strangers in a bed? A medieval inn. Another. Best keep your eyes open or you'll wake up as someone else's luggage. The humour is part defence, part camaraderie, a way to make light of a reality that could easily turn uncomfortable or even dangerous. The innkeeper passes through one last time, checking on his guests. He eyes the locked chest by the door, the one where wealthier travellers pay extra to secure their goods for the night. If you're lucky, you'll have nothing worth stealing. If you're not, you keep one hand on your bag and hope for honest neighbours. Bedmates shift and sigh. Someone's boots fall with a thud to the floor. Another traveller mutters in their sleep. The smell of ale, sweat, and wet wool blends with the musty straw beneath you. You try to claim a corner of blanket, but it's a losing battle. Everyone clings to their share. The room never quite falls silent. A chorus of snores, coughs, and restless movements fill the dark. Now and then, there are problems. A loud quarrel erupts in the corner. Someone accusing someone else of thievery, or just snoring too loudly. Sometimes, things escalate. The innkeeper may have to separate guests or call in a burly servant to restore order. Historians still argue whether these midnight disputes were mostly about theft, drunkenness, or the simple misery of too many people in too small a space. Yet, for all the discomfort, there is a strange sense of fellowship here. You are all travelers, all bound by the need for shelter and safety. In a world where roads are dangerous and darkness hides 1,000 threats, the inn becomes a haven, albeit a rowdy, restless one. You listen to tales of wolves on the road, of bandits lurking in the woods, of the saint's shrine at the next town over. Some pray before sleep, others clutch a lucky token, hoping to ward off bad dreams or bad luck. One quirky custom is the sharing of food or drink before bed. Sometimes a traveller will pass around a flask or break a loaf of bread, building a sense of shared purpose, if only for a few hours. The merchant claims it's bad luck not to share at least a sip, lest you wake up with your boots missing. You accept, not wanting to risk it. You feel the floor shudder as someone stomps up from the tap room below. A barmaid, yawning, squeezes onto a bench, tucking her feet beneath her skirt and joining the snoring chorus. In the far corner, a group of pilgrims softly sings a hymn, their voices blending with the wind that rattles the shutters. The communal sleep of the medieval inn is a symphony of lives crossing paths for a single night. It's not unusual to wake in the middle of the night, stiff cold, maybe missing a blanket. Sometimes you find a new bedmate, someone who crept in late from the road. Other times, you're alone, your companions having risen early to beat the dawn and the dangers of daybreak travel. As morning approaches, the room begins to stir. Boots clatter, coins jingle, someone grumbles about a missing hat. The innkeeper arrives with a pot of weak ale, or, if you're fortunate, a bowl of hot pottage. You rub your eyes, stretch aching limbs, and prepare to face the road once again, grateful, if only a little, for the company of strangers who made the night less lonely, if not exactly restful. In rare moments, friendship is forged. Two merchants agree to travel together, hoping there's safety in numbers. A farmhand offers to help a lost widow find her way to the next village, and sometimes someone quietly thanks you for a shared story or a bit of bread, a small gesture that lingers as you step out into the uncertain day. Not all inns are the same. In some towns, the local law forbids single women from staying alone, so the innkeeper arranges sleeping partners as a matter of course, pairing travellers for mutual protection, or at least for the sake of appearances. Historians still argue whether these customs kept people safe, or merely preserved the fragile boundaries of medieval respectability. For the weary, the luxury of solitude is almost unimaginable. Even those with money may have to pay a steep price for a private room, and it's rarely worth it unless you're nobility or clergy. For the rest, the inn is a lesson in compromise, negotiation, and occasionally survival. You find yourself developing an instinct for reading a room, choosing a bedmate less likely to steal your boots and more likely to share a joke or a crust of bread. The reality is simple. In the world of medieval travel, every night is a roll of the dice. You could wake beside a merchant with stories of distant lands, a thief with light fingers, or a pilgrim whispering prayers in the dark. Sometimes you wake to find a flea or two as well, but that's another story for another night. Evenings spent in these inns become a tapestry of fleeting encounters, snippets of other people's journeys, hopes and fears, woven into the fabric of your own. It's a strange comfort, this noisy crowd of strangers, perhaps in a world full of uncertainties, simply having someone nearby, even a stranger, is worth more than the softest bed. You gather your things, step carefully over sleeping bodies, and thank the innkeeper with a tired nod. As you walk out into the chill dawn, You carry with you the knowledge that for a night you were not alone. Maybe you even have a new story to tell the next time you need a place to sleep, or a bed to share under another leaky roof somewhere down the winding road. The world quiets as you pass beneath a stone archway and into the cloistered halls of a medieval monastery. Here, sleep is not the wild, noisy jumble of a peasant's cottage or a raucous inn. Instead, everything moves according to the rule, a deliberate, rhythmic order that shapes not only prayer and work, but the very act of lying down to rest. Stone floors chill your feet as you move through the corridors. The air holds a faint scent of beeswax and incense, with the soft patter of sandals echoing down long candlelit passages. Tonight, you enter the dormitorium, the communal sleeping hall where dozens of monks or nuns prepare for the night. No beds with private canopies here, just rows of simple pallets, sometimes separated by low wooden partitions, sometimes not at all. Each space is narrow, the bedding spare a straw mattress, a woolen blanket, a small pillow or none at all, the sum of luxury in a life meant to strip away earthly distraction. The silence is powerful. Voices drop to whispers as the community prepares for compline, the last prayers before sleep. For monks and nuns, sleep itself is an act of devotion. Every hour ordered by bells, every moment watched by centuries of tradition. You kneel with the others, reciting psalms, feeling the weariness of a long day spent in work, study, and prayer. Yet, even among these holy souls, the practical needs of warmth, safety, and human company shape the night. Some monasteries and convents, especially in colder regions, encourage bed sharing during the deepest part of winter, when frost creeps across the stones and the thin blankets do little to chase away the chill. It is a silent concession to nature. Even the most devout are not immune to shivering, nor to the simple comfort of another's presence. The official rules, though, are strict. Most monastic orders command chastity and separation between men and women, indeed, between all sleeping partners. Each monk or nun has their own narrow berth, their own space marked by the shadow of their body on the straw. The rule of Saint Benedict, copied and cited for centuries, lays out the ideal. Let them sleep clothed and girt with belts or cords. Let them not have knives at their sides while they sleep, lest perhaps they injure themselves in their slumber. No midnight wandering, no conversation once the lights are out. Obedience, silence, and humility are the watchwords, but the reality, as always, is messier. The cold and the practicalities of architecture sometimes demand exceptions. In harsh climates, brothers or sisters may quietly share a blanket or even a pallet, huddled back to back for warmth beneath the watchful gaze of the Virgin or the abbess. A novice might be placed near an older monk for guidance, or to ensure that no one falls ill unnoticed during the long hours of darkness. There are stories, too, of rules bent or broken. Historians still argue whether the so-called bed checks, inspections by senior monks or nuns to ensure everyone was where they should be, were truly effective. Some say forbidden friendships blossomed nonetheless, hidden beneath the guise of midnight prayer or study. Others believe the rules were mostly obeyed, enforced by a mixture of discipline, fear, and a sincere desire for holiness. The truth, as so often, is somewhere in between. The dormitory is never fully dark. A single candle or lamp, kept burning through the night, casts shadows that flicker over sleeping faces. It is both a safeguard against fire, a real and deadly threat in ancient wooden buildings, and a symbol of vigilance, a reminder that the spiritual life is never fully at rest. Among the community, quirks and traditions flourish. Some monks mutter their favorite psalms as lullabies, rocking gently on their beds. Others tuck a relic or blessed object beneath their pillow, hoping for protection or inspiration in their dreams. The oldest nun in the convent always claims the spot nearest the door, saying it lets her rise first for morning prayers and also to keep a discreet eye on latecomers or rule breakers. Laughter is rare, but you catch it sometimes, a soft chuckle as someone's stomach growls, or a giggle from a group of novices who can't quite banish all the day's excitement. It is said that the best sleepers in the monastery are those who have learned to let go of all earthly worries. One brother, famous for his serenity, falls asleep before his head touches the pillow. Another is known to wake at the faintest sound, convinced each creak is the arrival of an angel, or perhaps a thief in the night. The balance between discipline and comfort is delicate. Some struggle, some adapt. Not all monastic sleeping was communal, though. In wealthy or especially large abbeys, senior monks or nuns, priors, abbots, prioresses, might have small private cells, little rooms just large enough for a cot, a desk, and a few books. Even then, a novice might sleep nearby, ready to fetch water or run messages as needed. Complete solitude was rare. Even the holiest found themselves part of a rhythm of footsteps, bells, and the whispered prayers of community. For some, sleep was almost a battleground, an act of will, not just bodily necessity. Many monastic orders practiced matins, the night office, waking everyone in the middle of the night for prayer and song. You wake with them, stumbling in the cold dark to the chapel, chanting ancient words while the rest of the world slumbers, then back to bed, for a few more hours of restless rest before dawn. The effect, over years, is remarkable. Some monks and nuns claim that broken sleep makes them more attuned to the spiritual world, more open to visions or insights that visit only in the quietest hours. Others, less mystical, simply get used to being tired, learning to nap whenever and wherever they can. Historians still argue whether these night vigils fostered spiritual ecstasy or simply chronic sleep deprivation. Occasionally, an outsider is allowed to stay the night, a visiting priest, a noble seeking sanctuary, a sick villager brought in for care. The rules are adjusted, beds shuffled, space made for the stranger. The community welcomes and guards them, knowing that hospitality is a sacred duty. In such moments, even the silence of the dormitory feels warmer, more alive. Not every night is peaceful. Someone might fall ill, or suffer a fit of nightmares, or rise in confusion and wander the halls. The responsibility for care falls to all. Someone will fetch water, another will pray, another will sit quietly nearby until peace returns. In the morning, no one speaks much of it, but a little extra bread might be left by the bedside, or a kind word exchanged as the day begins. One well-known monastic joke: if you wish for a soft bed, may you wake as a layman. It always gets a few tired smiles. Even if the mattresses never get any thicker, the spiritual life, you learn, demands both discipline and a sense of humor. In the long winter months, even the strictest orders might relax the rules. Extra blankets are handed out, and sometimes the brothers or sisters are allowed to sleep a little later after a night of particularly harsh storms. No one is immune to the cold, nor to the simple human longing for comfort. As you lie there, listening to the rise and fall of dozens of breaths, you realize that the monastic dormitory is a microcosm of the medieval world itself, bound by rules, shaped by tradition, and always negotiating the line between what is ideal and what is simply necessary. There is vulnerability here, but also strength, the knowledge that you are never alone, even in the darkest hour of the night. As dawn breaks, a bell sounds. The community stirs, rising as one, folding blankets, washing quickly and preparing for another day of prayer and work. The sleep may have been short, the mattress thin, but the sense of belonging, the strange, sacred comfort of sharing not just a roof but a rhythm, is something that lingers long after the night's shadows have faded. The faint glow of torchlight flickers through the halls of a bustling manor as the household gathers in anticipation. Tonight, the air buzzes with the tension and excitement of a medieval wedding night, a ritual that is at once deeply private and disarmingly public, a paradox that would leave modern couples clutching their bed sheets in horror. Here, the marriage bed isn't just about romance, it's about law, custom, family honor, and a community's eager curiosity. As you find yourself in the heart of the great hall, the line between witness and participant blurs, and you realize that sleeping partners on a wedding night are never truly alone. The entire process begins long before sunset. Throughout the afternoon, preparations whirl through the manor, fresh straw laid in the nuptial chamber, sweet herbs scattered on the floor, linens aired and arranged. Sometimes the bed itself is freshly constructed or blessed, anointed with holy water and watched over by stern-faced elders. The display of abundance is important. The family's finest sheets and pillows are paraded through the halls, a public spectacle that underscores the couple's new status, and not so subtly the household's prosperity. As the wedding feast fades into dusk, the focus shifts inexorably to the bedchamber. Guests crowd the corridors, laughing and singing bawdy songs that mix nerves with merriment. In some regions, the newlyweds are led to their room in a noisy procession, pelted with nuts, dried fruit, or, if the crowd is feeling particularly cheeky, wheat grains or petals, symbols of fertility and good fortune. For the bride and groom, there's little chance of privacy. All eyes are on them, every gesture scrutinized and analyzed. Here's where the medieval reality becomes almost surreal to modern sensibilities. The act of bedding the marriage was a public one. Witnesses, often close family or trusted friends, sometimes a whole cluster of the couple's peers, are present not only to celebrate but to ensure legally and socially that the union is consummated. Marriage in this world isn't simply a matter of love or even contract. It is a public event, binding two families, securing inheritance, cementing alliances, and hopefully ensuring future children. Historians still argue whether this public scrutiny was meant as a safeguard against disputes, a way to bolster communal ties, or just the inevitable outcome of a society with little respect for personal privacy. If you're one of the witnesses, you might stand to the side, candle in hand, nervously averting your eyes yet keenly aware that your testimony might one day be called upon in a dispute over legitimacy or inheritance. Some communities demand only that witnesses see the couple get into bed together, perhaps with bare feet, touching the sheets, while others require a more explicit demonstration that leaves nothing to the imagination. Jokes abound. One popular quip: if you're too modest, you might end up a widow before morning. But beneath the laughter, the anxiety is real. Once the door is finally closed, the pressure doesn't ease. The couple must now negotiate a world of expectation and uncertainty, their first true night as sleeping partners, shadowed by tradition. Sometimes, a friend or family member is stationed just outside the door, ready to vouch for the act should questions arise. In certain noble houses, the bedchamber itself is never entirely empty. A trusted servant or lady-in-waiting might linger in a corner, ready to fetch water, offer advice, or simply act as a witness. Privacy is a rare and fragile thing. Amid all this, the marriage bed itself is a symbol heavy with meaning. The linens, often embroidered with family crests or symbols of fertility, are closely examined the next morning for evidence of consummation. In some places, the stained sheets are paraded through the streets in a raucous display, proof to all that the union is legitimate. In others, the sheets are quietly checked by elders or midwives, their word accepted as final. The focus on consummation and evidence is no small matter. In a society obsessed with inheritance and lineage, the legal standing of children and thus the future of entire estates can rest on what happens, or is witnessed to happen, on this one night. Marriages could be annulled, dowries withheld, or alliances shattered if doubts arose. There are recorded cases of disputes years later hinging on the testimony of a witness to a wedding night, their memory suddenly becoming the linchpin of dynastic destiny. And yet, for all the seriousness, the night isn't without its lighter moments. Songs and laughter filter up from the hall below, guests celebrating long after the couple has retreated. Old women share tales of their own wedding nights, mixing advice with warnings and the occasional wink. Don't let him hog the blanket, as a favourite, along with, if you hear snoring, roll him over before he sets fire to the bed with his breath. There are superstitions too. Some families tuck charms or herbs beneath the mattress, rosemary for fidelity, lavender for peace, and in certain regions, a pinch of salt to ward off jealousy or curses. In the north, a piece of iron might be slipped under the bed to guard against fairies or evil spirits, who, it's whispered, delight in sowing discord among newlyweds. Historians still argue whether these customs had real power or simply offered a bit of comfort on a nerve-wracking night. In many noble houses, the marriage bed is almost a public monument, positioned in a prominent chamber, often with ornate carvings and heavy curtains. The size and decoration of the bed send a clear message about the family's wealth and status. During particularly grand occasions, entire processions of guests might tour the bridal chamber, admiring the linens, making sly jokes and dropping small gifts or coins under the pillow for luck. But for the couple, once the candles are snuffed and the door latched, reality settles in. They lie together, sometimes strangers, until this very night, navigating new territory with all the awkwardness, hope, and uncertainty that comes with it. In the flickering darkness, laughter and tears are equally possible, and the weight of expectation can be felt in every shared breath. Not every wedding night goes smoothly. There are tales of nervous grooms fainting, brides overwhelmed by the scrutiny, or family feuds erupting into shouting matches outside the door. One famous story tells of a lord who, too drunk to stand, fell asleep before even reaching the bed, leaving his new wife and half the manor in suspense. The event was talked about for years, an endless source of jokes at feasts and a cautionary tale for future generations. For those of lower status, wedding nights might be less elaborate, but no less public. In village inns or simple cottages, the entire household might know exactly what's happening, if only by the embarrassed faces at breakfast, or the teasing songs sung by younger siblings. Privacy is a dream for poets, not peasants. Still, there is often a sense of community support, meals shared, advice offered, and a general hope for happiness and healthy children in the years to come. With dawn, the world changes. The couple wakes to a new status, husband and wife, their bond ratified not only by law but by the witness of their community. Sometimes there's a formal breakfast, gifts exchanged, more songs and laughter. Occasionally, the new wife is presented with a special cup of spiced wine or a bowl of porridge, a symbolic gesture meant to bring good fortune and fertility. And yet, the pressure never fully disappears. Every subsequent night carries a trace of that first, the knowledge that sleep is never entirely private, that beds are both sanctuaries and stages, places where love, law, and legacy are woven together in the hush of darkness. The marriage bed, in all its forms, remains central to medieval society. It is where the future is conceived, literally and figuratively, whether in a grand manor, a modest cottage, or the cramped quarters of an urban dwelling. The first night together is just the beginning of a long, complicated negotiation between tradition, desire, and the ever-watchful eyes of family and community. And as you lie back, listening to the fading echoes of laughter in the corridor, you realize that in the Middle Ages, no one truly sleeps alone, not on a night like this. The past, the future, and the hopes of everyone you know are right there beside you, sharing the covers, keeping you awake, and watching over every dream. The candle guttered out long ago, but the night refuses to settle into silence. All around you, the great tapestry of medieval sleep stirs with 1,000 interruptions, some welcome, many not. As you shift beneath your blanket, pressed in beside the regular tangle of siblings or friends, you realize there is no such thing as an uninterrupted night. If you thought darkness guaranteed peace, the Middle Ages have other plans. The first thing you notice is the snoring. It is epic. Generations of medieval households could have competed for medals in the sport, the symphony ranging from gentle rumbles to eruptions that could rattle loose plaster from the wall. There are old jokes about snoring so loud that it drives mice from the rafters. Children giggle about Uncle Bertram, whose snores can be heard through stone walls and 3 closed doors. Historians still argue whether the prevalence of snoring back then was caused by the cold, the bedding, or the endless tankards of ale before bedtime. You quickly learn to tune out most of the noise until it becomes impossible. Beyond the snoring, the darkness is alive with movement. Someone is always getting up, a grandmother limping to the corner to relieve herself in the chamber pot, a toddler waking from a nightmare and shuffling blindly across the floor to find the safety of an older sibling. A mother might rise to quiet a crying infant, rocking and shushing, the sound as much a part of the household rhythm as the tolling of church bells outside. Occasionally there is the sharp clatter of something dropped, an overturned mug, a knocked-over stool. A muttered curse follows, and the house shuffles, briefly restless before sinking back into its noisy repose. All the while you lie awake, half listening, half dreaming, the sounds of other people's sleep weaving through your own. Some disturbances come from outside. The medieval night, especially in town or village, can be unpredictable. There might be a drunken brawl in the street, voices raised and boots stomping past the shutters. Sometimes dogs bark in a chain reaction chorus that wakes the whole neighborhood. On stormy nights, rain hammers the roof so loudly that all conversation stops until it passes. Then there are the more unusual interruptions. Occasionally someone in the house rises in the grip of what modern minds might call sleepwalking. The medieval explanation is less forgiving. It might be seen as a visitation by spirits, a punishment for sin, or the work of an overactive imagination. Still, it's a recognized phenomenon. Night wanderers who shuffle about, eyes open but minds elsewhere. Some households keep a watchful eye on these wanderers, gently steering them back to bed before harm comes. Tales are told of people found at the door or out in the garden, with no memory of how they arrived there. Children sometimes talk in their sleep, mumbling about things that happened during the day or strange, unsettling dreams. Parents hush each other, listening for clues. Did their child's dream foretell illness or trouble? Historians still argue whether medieval people took such dreams seriously, but enough records survive to suggest that many listened, at least with a certain anxious attention. In wealthier homes or castles, night watchers, servants, guards, or sometimes trusted companions patrol the halls. Their job is to keep the peace, check for fire, and keep an eye out for danger. They also become unwilling witnesses to the nightly parade of disturbances, arguments whispered urgently behind closed doors, guests stumbling to the privy, or noble children sneaking snacks pilfered from the kitchens. Superstition flavors many of these nightly moments. If a dog howls at the moon, someone might mutter a prayer or throw salt over their shoulder. If a candle suddenly gutters out, it could be a sign that spirits are near. Many families keep a sprig of rosemary or a silver coin under the pillow, hoping it will keep nightmares or ghosts at bay. In some regions, people whisper that if you wake suddenly at midnight, a witch might be walking past your house. There is always the fear of fire, a real and present danger in every medieval dwelling. Households take pains to bank the hearth before sleep, but accidents still happen. The nightmare of waking to smoke and flame is ever present, and some families even take turns staying half awake, ready to raise the alarm if needed. Stories of entire streets lost to a single wayward spark haunt the edges of the night. For many, the interruptions of the night are so routine that the concept of sleeping through is laughable. Instead, sleep comes in waves. A few hours, then waking, then another doze, with conversations and chores sometimes interwoven through the darkness. It's common for people to rise for a while, tending to animals, checking on sick family members, or simply sitting by the fire in quiet contemplation before returning to bed for a second sleep. Some modern historians debate whether this segmented pattern was a necessity or a preference, but it shapes the entire experience of medieval rest. Sometimes, not all interruptions are innocent. The night is a time for secrets as well as sleep. Lovers might arrange to meet while the house is quiet, slipping through shadows with whispered promises and trembling hands. Servants or older children sneak out to rendezvous with friends or to explore the mysteries of the night. A hidden flask of ale might be passed among siblings, or a late-night game of dice played by candlelight. And then there are the true disturbers, rats, mice, and other pests, whose rustlings can set off a chorus of shrieks and frantic flailing. There's a well-worn joke about the mouse who knew the softest pillow, or the rat who chewed through a lord's shoe while he slept. Some households keep cats expressly for this reason, earning their keep one midnight pounce at a time. Illness, too, can turn the night upside down. A coughing fit, a feverish child, or the unmistakable sounds of someone in pain can rouse an entire household to anxious wakefulness. Family members gather around offering water, prayers, and what little medicine they have. Sometimes a neighbor is fetched for advice, or a priest summoned for last rites. In such moments, the fragility of life is as palpable as the darkness pressing in at the windows. Occasionally there is joy as well as worry. A child born in the quiet hours brings a rush of excitement, hope, and relief, the entire house rejoicing together. On feast days or special occasions, midnight might find everyone wide awake, singing and celebrating by the fire before finally tumbling into bed in a muddle of limbs and laughter. Animals, as always, are part of the drama. The family dog may bark at every creak, a cat might decide that your face is the perfect place to settle, and the occasional escaped goat will upend everyone's sleep. Chickens sometimes cluck in alarm, setting off a ripple of wakefulness. In the countryside, the distant howl of wolves can make even the bravest lie awake, listening. One thing is certain, no two nights are exactly the same. Sleep in the Middle Ages is not a gentle slide into oblivion, but a journey filled with obstacles, interruptions, and the constant shifting company of others. You might dream of a quiet night alone, but the reality is far more lively, and sometimes far more comforting. Yet, through all these disturbances, a kind of acceptance develops. People learn to share, to forgive small irritations, and to find humor in the chaos. A brother's loud snore becomes a family legend. The time Grandma chased a mouse out of the blankets with a slipper is retold for years. The world is unpredictable, but at least you are not facing it alone. As the first blue light of dawn filters in, you find yourself blinking awake, surrounded by the soft chorus of those you know best. There are aches and yawns, grumbles and jokes, but also a sense of accomplishment. Another night survived, another bundle of stories to carry forward, and as you stretch, nudging a sibling who's drooled on your pillow, you realize that the real magic of medieval nights lies not in perfect peace, but in the imperfect, noisy, utterly human company you keep until morning. The night deepens and the house quiets at least, as much as it ever does. There's a lull now, a pocket of peace before the world wakes up again, and in this rare softness, you find yourself pressed between the warmth of a mother's arm and the restless legs of a sibling. You start with the youngest. Babies, after all, are the most vulnerable, tiny wriggling bundles entirely dependent on the world around them for survival. In an era where cold, hunger, and illness wait at the doorstep, no sensible parent would let an infant sleep alone. So, you find newborns snuggled close to their mothers, sharing body heat, a heartbeat, and that soft, wordless bond that nighttime seems to deepen. A child's first bed is almost always its mother's side, sometimes cradled in the crook of her arm or tucked under the same blanket. But mothers aren't always the only ones sharing the space. Wet nurses, women paid or otherwise tasked with breastfeeding infants, are part of many medieval households, especially among the well-to-do. Sometimes the lady of the house doesn't nurse her own children, whether from custom, necessity, or illness, and so another woman fills the gap. The wet nurse might live with the family, her own child in tow, or commute daily, but at night she is there, a constant presence beside the baby. In wealthy homes, the wet nurse might even sleep in a small bed next to the cradle, ready to rise at the first cry. Historians still argue whether this close proximity fostered deeper emotional bonds between nurse and child than between mother and child, but the records are full of stories of lifelong affection and sometimes jealousy. Even in peasant homes, the arrangement is fluid. Mothers, grandmothers, older sisters, whoever is nearby and able take turns caring for infants through the long hours. Everyone in the household learns the drill: how to rock a cradle with a foot while drazing, how to soothe a baby's fretful cries without fully waking, how to share the thin warmth of a blanket between 3 or 4. There's no such thing as sleep training. The goal is survival, not self-soothing. If a child wakes hungry, sick, or afraid, someone will respond, half awake and wholly loving. Of course, the bed doesn't belong only to mothers and babies. Siblings, too, crowd in, elbowing for the best spots. The youngest are usually closest to the parents, with older children stacked outward in age and rank. Some nights, you find yourself sandwiched between two sisters, their hair tangling with yours, their feet stealing the covers. On others, you wake to find your little brother curled against your back, seeking comfort after a nightmare. If there's a nurse or a servant in the house, she might sleep nearby, ready to answer if a child cries out. The lines between servant and family softened by shared exhaustion. For the wealthy, a dedicated nursery, an innovation borrowed from noble courts, might keep younger children in a separate room, watched over by nurses, maids, or even tutors. The idea of the nursery, however, is less about privacy and more about order and hierarchy. The children are still never alone. A nursemaid sleeps on a trundle bed, always within reach, her ears tuned to every whimper and cough. Sometimes, a favorite sibling or cousin is allowed to sleep over in the nursery, turning bedtime into a whispered adventure full of secrets and giggles. There's a joke in one grand house. The only ones who sleep alone here are the statues in the garden. For less fortunate children, especially orphans or foundlings, the communal bed can be both a comfort and a trial. In monasteries and hospitals, dozens of children might sleep side by side on pallets, tended by overworked nurses or lay sisters. Warmth is precious, and the children quickly learn to huddle close, sharing blankets and body heat, whispering stories late into the night. Sometimes, the only lullaby is the soft sound of someone breathing nearby. Caring for children at night is no small task, and even the most loving nurse or parent is bound to grumble sometimes. There are endless messes to clean, noses to wipe, and disputes to settle. Someone always wets the bed, and the resulting scramble for dry straw or clean linens can turn even the sleepiest household into chaos. Yet in the morning, there's a sense of accomplishment, a weary pride in having gotten everyone through the night. It isn't just babies who demand attention. Sick children, always a source of anxiety, are watched with special vigilance. Parents and caretakers take turns sitting up through the night, dabbing brows with cool water, muttering prayers, and telling stories to soothe feverish minds. Neighbors might be summoned to help, a grandmother brought in to lend experience, a village healer to offer a tonic. Even older siblings step in, fetching water or comforting a little one who can't sleep. Historians still argue whether medieval communities were truly so close-knit, but it's clear that in times of illness, everyone was drawn into the circle of care. Sometimes in wealthier homes, a hired nurse is given authority over all the children at night. She may become a beloved part of the family, her word law when it comes to bedtimes and midnight feasts. There are tales of cunning nurses who would frighten children with stories of goblins or witches to keep them in bed, only to later comfort them with sweet songs or stolen bits of honey bread. In the best households, the nurse is a second mother. In others, a figure both respected and feared. Night after night, the same dramas play out. Someone cries out in a dream, and a cascade of waking ripples through the bed. Children sneak out for water or to peer through the shutters at the moonlit street. On feast days, everyone might stay up late, too excited to sleep, the house echoing with laughter and the rustle of restless little bodies. For all the commotion, there are moments of deep tenderness. A mother smoothing a daughter's hair, a nurse humming a song from her own childhood, siblings snuggle together in a tangle of arms and legs. Sleep here is not an escape, but an embrace, a nightly reunion that reinforces bonds too easily frayed in daylight. One quirky custom. In some regions, children are lulled to sleep with stories about creatures that visit naughty sleepers, sprites who pull your toes, fairies who steal your dreams, or goblins who tangle your hair if you don't close your eyes. It's part discipline, part entertainment, and it works more often than not, if only because no one wants to wake up with their braids in knots. Sometimes, disputes arise about who gets the good spot in the bed, the side closest to the fire, or the one furthest from the drafty door. Older siblings might make up elaborate games to decide, or simply claim seniority. The losers grumble but quickly make peace, knowing tomorrow night the battle will begin anew. Even with all this, the night is not without its shadows. Infants are especially at risk, and medieval people are deeply aware of the dangers of overlaying the accidental smothering of a child in a crowded bed. To prevent this, some households build wooden cradles that sit snug against the parent's bed, allowing closeness without risk. Others place pillows as barriers, or encourage older siblings to sleep in shifts, keeping a watchful eye on the baby. But morning comes too soon, as always. The bed erupts in a chaos of yawns, complaints, and the mad dash for breakfast. Blankets are shaken out, straw swept, and the whole cycle prepares to repeat. Yet, as you rise, blinking in the pale light, you sense something profound. Each night spent together is another thread in the tapestry family, a quiet proof of love, care, and survival. And as you go about your day, the memory of arms around you and the steady breath of someone who cares lingers, a secret warmth to carry through the hardships of medieval life. In a world full of uncertainty, the crowded bed is both fortress and sanctuary, a place where the youngest and oldest, the weakest and strongest, all find a measure of peace before facing the day again. You wake in the grey hours before dawn, to the familiar rustle of straw and the heavy warmth of too many bodies pressed close. But this morning, as you sit up, you're keenly aware of another set of eyes, watchful, alert, and perhaps a little too interested in every move you make. In the medieval world, servants aren't just figures in the background. At night, they're often the silent partners, lying mere inches away, weaving their own presence into the fabric of family sleep. If you are a member of the gentry or merchant class, the day's last candle is hardly out before the household hierarchy rearranges itself for the night. Masters and mistresses retire to their beds, grand curtained things with carved posts and mountains of linen. Yet just beneath the extravagance, often literally beneath the bed, are the servants, those who keep the household running by day and guard its peace at night. It's easy to imagine privacy as a privilege of wealth, but in truth, true solitude is hard to come by. Even the grandest medieval homes are busy hives of activity, and nowhere is that more evident than at bedtime. In many households, the lady's maid or the master's manservant will sleep in a trundle or pallet at the foot of the bed, always within call. For small children of noble birth, a nurse or governess is never far away, ready to fetch water, calm fears, or simply watch over their charge through the night. There's practicality in this proximity. The risks of fire, theft, or sudden illness are never far from anyone's mind. Who better to trust than the servant who sleeps within arm's reach? If trouble strikes, a cry brings help in seconds, not minutes. Sometimes the line between vigilance and exhaustion blurs. Servants take turns sleeping light, ears trained for any sign of danger or need, always half waiting for the next command. Of course, there are other reasons for such closeness, some more whispered than spoken. Trust is a delicate thing, and sleeping arrangements can reflect not just affection or duty, but suspicion as well. There are stories of wealthy merchants who insisted their most trusted or most easily watched servants sleep in the same room, both to keep valuables safe and to ensure the servant themselves did not get up to mischief. Historians still argue whether this tradition was more about protection, control, or just the limitations of space and architecture. As you drift in and out of sleep, you overhear the sounds of your household, a servant padding softly to add wood to the fire, another settling in after checking the windows and doors. In some houses, younger servants bunk together in a corner of the master bedroom, sharing a straw pallet and a single thin blanket. They giggle softly, sharing rumors and jokes in the dark, before falling quiet at a single stern glance from the head of the household. The proximity can breed both closeness and tension. There are bonds forged in the quiet of the night, secrets shared, griefs comforted, laughter exchanged. A maid who has seen her mistress weep at midnight, or a boy who has helped his young lord hide a pet rabbit beneath the sheets, becomes more than just a servant in those hours. The roles of master and servant are blurred by shared humanity, but such intimacy is not always comfortable. For servants, being so close to their employers means a total lack of privacy, a sense of always being on display, even in their sleep. Some bristle at the arrangement, grumbling softly to each other over chores. There are tales of servants sneaking out after their masters are asleep, snatching a few moments of freedom before the house wakes again. And sometimes the master is the one who feels watched. There are jokes about the eyes under the bed, servants who seem to know every secret, every whispered word between spouses, every midnight snack or hasty prayer. Best not to talk about your business at night, an old saying goes, unless you want the whole household to know by sunrise. For female servants, the night brings its own set of challenges. Ladies' maids, nursemaids, or scullery girls are expected to be endlessly available, always ready to answer a child's cry or fetch a forgotten item. In the dead of winter, it might fall to the youngest servant to sleep closest to the draughty door, forming the first line of defense against the cold. Sometimes a favored servant is rewarded with a spot nearer the fire, a rare mark of trust or affection. But for every kindness, there are stories of servants woken harshly, scolded for snoring or accused of imagined mischief. In large urban homes or small castles, the layout of the household often requires even more creative arrangements. Sometimes, servants sleep in hallways, alcoves, or even in wardrobes repurposed for the night. The lucky ones have their own garret or attic, a place to escape, if only briefly, the ever-watchful gaze of their employers. Yet many prefer the warmth and security of sleeping close to the family, especially in troubled times. There's a legendary tale about a wealthy merchant whose fortune was saved because his loyal servant, sleeping on a mat beside the bed, woke to the sound of thieves picking the lock. The servant's quick thinking, raising the alarm and chasing the burglars off with nothing more than a candle and a heavy shoe, became the stuff of household legend. Historians still argue whether these stories are rare exceptions or the unspoken rule of domestic loyalty. Trust, suspicion, and dependence tangle together in the dark. Some masters leave money or important documents under their pillow, knowing their servants' nearness is the best security. Others test their staff with small deceptions, leaving trinkets out to see if they disappear by morning. The games of trust and fear play out nightly, woven into every yawn and shifting blanket. Yet, for all this, affection often blooms in the oddest places. Children, especially, form strong bonds with their nurses or maids, treating them as surrogate parents, confidants, and partners in mischief. A nurse's lullaby, sung softly in the dark, becomes a comfort remembered for life. A kitchen boy who sneaks an extra roll to a favorite young lord may one day become his loyal squire. And then, inevitably, there are the scandals. Houses big and small trade stories of masters who strayed, maids with secret lovers, or servants who overheard a plot and used the knowledge for their own gain. The night is a time of lowered guard and open secrets, and every household has its own whispered tales, some true, many invented in the hush before dawn. It isn't just the rich who live like this. In middle-class homes, apprentices, servants, and even tenants might sleep in whatever space is available. A merchant's apprentice might curl up in the shop's back room, while the housemaid claims a corner in the kitchen. At fairs or markets, whole caravans of workers sleep together, side by side, their ranks distinguished only by the roughness of their blankets or the thickness of their straw. The reality is universal. At night, the walls between classes and roles are thinner, and everyone becomes, in some way, a sleeping partner, bound together by necessity, circumstance, and the unspoken understanding that morning will bring a fresh set of roles to play. One quirky tradition persists across regions. Some households keep a bell or clapper beside the bed, meant for the master to summon servants at any hour. The dreaded sound, echoing through the dark, is enough to make even the sleepiest maid leap up, heart pounding. Servants joke about hiding the clapper or stuffing the bell with rags, though few dare actually do it. Morning always arrives, often with more groans than songs. The first servant upstokes the fire, fetches water, and begins the day's endless tasks. Blankets are shaken, beds remade, and the small confidences of the night are tucked away, sometimes to be shared over the breakfast fire, sometimes never spoken of again. As you rise and stretch, You realize that the world you inhabit at night is one of fragile alliances and whispered truths. Sleep here is not only a necessity, but a dance of trust and obligation, of secrets kept and stories half told. In the medieval household, servants beneath the bed or in it are not just background figures. They are essential partners in the nightly rituals that hold a family together through storm and silence until the first light calls everyone back to their appointed places. The fire's last glow flickers low, and the night closes in with its peculiar medieval blend of superstition and practicality. As you settle onto your lumpy mattress or the rough straw-stuffed sack that passes for one, you realize you are not alone, and it isn't just other people you're sharing this space with. Tonight your sleeping partners are an odd assortment of animals, cherished objects and lucky charms. In the shadowy world of the Middle Ages, the bed is as much a crossroads of the tangible and the mystical as any village green or church nave. It starts with the simplest companions, animals. In poor homes, warmth is a matter of survival. Families welcome cats and dogs under the covers, not just as pets, but as living, breathing radiators. A curled-up dog at your feet keeps away the worst of the cold, and the purring cat on your chest brings not just comfort, but reassurance, at least until it needs you with sharp claws in the small hours. Even hens or rabbits sometimes sneak in for the night, burrowing into the bedding, their feathers and fur blending with straw and threadbare linens. Historians still argue whether this was strictly practical, or if, over time, people simply grew too fond of the company to care about feathers in the sheets. The wealthier might sneer at such rustic habits, but in drafty manor houses, the story is similar, though the animals might be finer. Small lapdogs bred for company, or even the occasional monkey or songbird in its cage, brought near the bed for entertainment and novelty. One queen of legend kept a tiny jeweled box of live crickets beside her bed, convinced their song would protect her from bad dreams and ill luck. Beyond the warmth and companionship, animals are seen as sentinels. Dogs, especially, are trusted with keeping watch, their barks or growls warning of danger from both the living and the supernatural. There's a popular saying, better to share a bed with a watchdog than with a lot. Some even believe that animals can see spirits that people cannot, and a dog howling at an empty corner is enough to send a shiver down even the bravest spine. Yet it isn't only living creatures that join you in the medieval bed. The mattress itself might hide objects placed there for luck, health, or protection. Charms of every description, iron nails to keep away witches, sprigs of rue or rosemary for peaceful dreams, a scrap of a saint's cloak or a tiny phial of holy water are sewn into the corners of pillows or tucked beneath straw. Parents might place a child's lost tooth under the mattress, hoping it will bring healthy adult teeth, or an amulet under the baby's head to ward off the evil eye. Some customs are deeply local. In the far north, children sleep with carved wooden trolls to keep away mischievous fairies. In France, a bride tucks her first weaving shuttle under her pillow to ensure skillful hands and domestic luck. Throughout Europe, the belief persists that certain objects like horseshoes, bones, or even shoes turned upside down can turn aside the envy of jealous neighbors or restless spirits. Of course, not every object in the bed is meant for magic. Some are simply the precious possessions of the poor, a favorite spoon, a carved wooden toy, a rag doll or ball. For many, the bed is the one place these treasures are truly safe. You might clutch a lucky coin or a smooth pebble, or keep a beloved book close, if you are fortunate enough to own one. There's a story about a young apprentice who slept every night with his only pair of shoes under his pillow, terrified that someone might steal them while he dreamed. His friends teased him mercilessly, but he always woke with his shoes and his pride intact. Food, too, sometimes makes its way under the covers. A crust of bread, a piece of cheese, or a sweet meant to be eaten before dawn. Superstition mingles with simple hunger. A mother may tuck a piece of garlic under her child's pillow to protect against fevers, or a grandfather may insist on a sip of cider before bed to keep nightmares at bay. Historians still argue whether these remedies were ever effective, but the records are full of recipes for sleep tonics, amulets and potions, proof perhaps of centuries of trial and error. One of the quirkiest medieval sleeping partners is the bed warmer. Not the kind with coals, but a hot brick or stone wrapped in cloth, heated by the fire and slipped under the covers at night. Some homes have special pots or pans for this purpose, the metal hissing softly as it warms the sheets. Children fight over who gets the hot rock, and there are more than a few tales of singed toes and scolded siblings. In noble households, luxury goes further. Feather beds are stuffed with herbs, lavender, chamomile, rose petals, even hops, all chosen for their supposed sleep-inducing or protective properties. Bed curtains, dyed with expensive plant extracts, are believed to shield against bad air, wandering spirits, or the insidious cold. A tapestry showing Saint Michael defeating a dragon hangs beside the bed, its colours faded but its protective intent unyielding. Yet, sometimes the bedfellows are less literal and more psychological. Nightmares, sleep paralysis, and strange dreams are all common enough, and the fear of what visits you in sleep is as real as any draft or creak of the floorboards. People arm themselves with prayers, some whispered, some shouted into the darkness. A candle might be left burning, just in case, or a bowl of water placed beneath the bed, to catch wandering spirits before they reach the sleeper. In the countryside, people mark crosses above the bed, trusting that a visible sign of faith will keep evil at bay. Still, the line between comfort and superstition is thin. Some sleep with their heads at the foot of the bed, believing it confuses demons or witches. Others scatter millet or salt on the floor. If a spirit enters, it must stop and count every grain before approaching. These rituals, passed from parent to child, are half joke, half serious, and entirely a part of nightly life. There are oddities born of pure necessity too. In crowded homes, people develop unique strategies for carving out a sense of personal space. An old shawl thrown over the head can serve as a portable room, blocking out light and noise. Children build little barricades of pillows or firewood, staking out territory amid the jumble. One old man boasts of sleeping every night with his hat on, convinced it keeps the dreams in and the cold out. The mingling of practical and magical companions in the medieval bed shapes not just how people sleep, but how they dream, hope, and worry. Objects become repositories of memory, a baby's first rattle, a stone from a faraway pilgrimage, a letter folded flat and kept close to the heart. The bed, crowded and noisy, becomes a museum of everyday life. Even illness brings its own bedfellows. Special pillows are stuffed with dried herbs for those with coughs. Poultices or charms are tied to sore limbs. In hard times, a sick child might share a bed with every member of the household in turn, everyone doing their best to lend warmth and comfort until health returns or mourning begins. Historians still argue whether this closeness helped or harmed, but the instinct to hold tight in the dark runs deep. The dawn brings a gentle chaos. Dogs stretch and yawn, chickens cluck from their stolen places, and children wake to find a doll, a pebble, or a slightly nibbled hunk of cheese tucked in beside them. Treasured objects are checked, beds shaken out, lucky charms quietly tucked away for another night. For a moment, as sunlight spills across the floor, you see the traces of last night's community, a messy, practical, and often magical collection of beings and belongings, all sharing the most vulnerable hours together. As you shake out your blanket and look around, it's clear, in the medieval world, the concept of a sleeping partner reaches far beyond the human. It includes every creature, comfort, and quirk that helps chase away the dark, making the journey from dusk to dawn a little warmer, a little safer, and if luck and magic hold, just a little more hopeful. A pale shaft of moonlight cuts across the floorboards as you draw the woolen blanket higher, searching for that fleeting pocket of warmth. Tonight, the season's edge is sharp. In the Middle Ages, sleep is never the same experience 2 nights in a row, not just because of who's in the bed, but because of the time of year. Tonight you feel in your bones what every medieval sleeper knew. The seasons rule your bed as firmly as any king. You might think of summer nights as gentle, even luxurious, But the medieval summer, especially in the city, is a double-edged sword. The sun sets late, and the houses crammed with bodies hold on to the day's heat, turning small rooms into stifling ovens. As you lie in a jumble of limbs and blankets, you feel sweat bead on your brow. Children toss and kick off covers. Mothers sit by the window fanning themselves, and somewhere a neighbor groans about the reek of men and onions. Windows, if you're lucky enough to have them, are thrown open to any breeze, their oiled parchment panes or wooden shutters pushed aside. But with air come the bugs, flies and mosquitoes drawn to every hint of sweat. The candle flame flickers with moths. You swat and grumble, and in crowded homes more than one bedmate wakes with fresh bites. Historians still argue whether the invention of mosquito nets made medieval summer sleep bearable or simply gave people something new to argue over. Evenings are long and restless. Some families take their blankets to the yard or roof, chasing the promise of cooler air. On feast days, you might see whole neighborhoods asleep in courtyards or under trees, adults snoring while children chase fireflies. The lucky or wealthy sometimes have summer bedding, lighter linens, thinner wool stored in chests, all winter and brought out as the sun grows stronger. In castles, tapestries are taken down to let the stone walls breathe. Still, there's no escaping the closeness of bodies, the chorus of snores and coughs echoing through sultry air. Come winter, everything changes. Cold becomes the enemy, and the routines of sleep adjust in every household. Blankets are piled high, anything from patched cloaks to old furs, the family's best defense against the night's icy bite. Straw is stuffed thicker into mattresses, and every warm body, human or animal, is pressed into service. Children jostle for the warm spot nearest the fire or the middle of the bed, where they're insulated on every side. The wealthier wrap themselves in furs or thick quilts, their beds draped with heavy curtains to trap heat. Hot bricks or irons, wrapped in rags and warmed by the hearth, are slipped under covers. In some towns, the tradition of the warming pan becomes so central that it's given as a wedding gift alongside stern warnings not to set the bed on fire. You hear old jokes about the house so cold in winter that the dog and the pig sleep indoors. Never mind the smell, warmth is all that matters. One grandfather tells his grandchildren, "If you sleep with your boots on, you'll be the only one with warm toes by sunrise." They all laugh, but many do exactly that. In the coldest weeks, even chamber pots freeze, and the thought of getting up in the night is enough to make anyone hold it until morning. It isn't just about temperature. The rhythm of sleep itself shifts with the seasons. In winter, nights are long, and sleep is often deep and slow. People gather closer together, rising later and spending more time in bed. It's not uncommon to sleep in 2 shifts, waking for an hour or so in the night to tend the fire, pray, or share quiet conversation before returning to sleep. Summer, with its brief nights and early dawns, pushes everyone to rise with the sun, yawning but resigned to another hot, crowded day. Rainy seasons bring their own challenges. Dampness creeps into every corner of the house, turning straw musty and making blankets heavy and cold. Leaks in the roof or cracked walls mean someone, usually the youngest or least fortunate, must move their bed to avoid a drip. In some homes, children sleep on benches or tables to stay above flooded floors. There are tales of shoes and blankets ruined overnight, of whole families huddling together to stay dry while the storm rages. Spring and autumn, too, make their mark. In spring, windows are opened for the first time in months, and beds aired in the hope of chasing away fleas and odors. Clean straw replaces old, and everyone welcomes the smell of fresh earth and growing things. But the changing temperatures are unpredictable. A warm night followed by a cold snap, and the bed must be reconfigured again, extra blankets fetched or tossed aside as needed. Autumn is the time for preparing. Woolens are mended, bedding is checked for holes, and herbs are gathered to stuff into mattresses for the coming cold. Mothers remind children not to kick off the covers. Fathers check the roof for leaks. The community comes together to share advice, trade blankets, and tell stories about winters past. How cold it was, how deep the snow, how clever everyone had to be just to make it through. In every season, the bed is a place of adaptation and resourcefulness. People improvise endlessly, stuffing gaps in the walls with rags, hanging blankets over doors, sleeping in shifts to keep the fire burning. A family might sleep sitting up, propped against each other, in a crowded room where space is scarce. Servants rotate sleeping spots, some getting the best places only after years of loyal service. One quirky seasonal habit: during heat waves, it's common to douse the sheets in water, then wring them out and lie down on the damp fabric, hoping for a cool night. Children shriek at the shock of cold but quickly settle, grateful for any relief. In winter, people sometimes heat sile stones in the fire, wrap them in cloth, and tuck them at their feet. There are superstitions about which foot to warm first. Some say the right brings luck, others insist on the left. There are always stories told in bed, tailored to the season. In winter, tales of frost giants and frozen lakes. In summer, warnings about will-o'-the-wisps and mysterious creatures that wander in the night. Historians still argue whether these bedtime stories were more for comfort or for discipline, but every region has its favorites. The seasons affect more than comfort. They shape the very nature of sleep. In the long darkness of winter, dreams are deeper and more vivid, perhaps shaped by the sense of enclosure and the nearness of others. In summer, sleep is lighter, full of brief awakenings and whispered conversations, as people seek relief from the heat. Parents swap tips on keeping children quiet. Elders reminisce about winters colder or summers hotter than any today. Holidays and festivals break up the monotony. On Midsummer's Eve, no one sleeps much. Bonfires burn late into the night, and beds are abandoned for dancing and revelry. On the coldest winter nights, the whole family may gather in a single bed, telling stories and singing songs to pass the hours until dawn. Adaptation becomes an art. The best sleepers are those who accept whatever the season brings, learning to drift off in a hot, noisy room, or to find comfort in a nest of blankets with a snoring dog at their feet. Some families develop elaborate rules for sharing space, rotating positions so everyone gets a turn at the best or worst spot. Jokes abound about drawing the short straw and ending up next to the cold wall or beneath the leaky window. Still, for all the hardship, there is a kind of pride in making it through each season. Surviving the coldest night or the muggiest heat wave becomes a badge of honor. In the morning, families swap stories over breakfast: whose teeth chattered the loudest, who slept through the thunder, who stole all the covers. Laughter softens the memory of discomfort and knits the household closer together. As you pull the covers tight, listening to the wind or the drone of summer insects, you are part of a tradition as old as time, one shaped by necessity, ingenuity, and the endless gentle battle between people and the elements. The medieval bed is never just a place to sleep. It is a living, breathing reflection of the seasons, a space that flexes, shifts, and survives, night after night, through all the change the world can bring. The moon has climbed high, bathing the sleeping chamber in ghostly silver, and as you roll over you feel a sharp pinch at your ankle, a sensation as old as time, and about as welcome as rain in your boots. Tonight you are not alone in your medieval bed, and it isn't the warmth of a sibling or the soft snore of a servant that disturbs your slumber. No, this night your true bedfellows are the crawling, biting, ever-hungry armies of the medieval world: bedbugs, fleas, lice, and a host of other tiny nightmares. It begins quietly enough. You brush at an itch, thinking nothing of it, but soon the sensation spreads. Another nip, then another, until you're awake, scratching, trying not to wake the others. In the glow of a single candle stub, you glimpse the truth, no matter your rank or riches. In the Middle Ages, no one truly escapes the company of these minuscule marauders. In the homes of the poor, the problem is constant and expected. Straw mattresses, changed rarely and shared by many, are perfect havens for pests. Each time fresh straw is brought in, it's already carrying new residents: tiny eggs, hidden bugs, and sometimes even hungry mice. As the night deepens, the scratching chorus grows. Children squirm and whimper, parents grumble, and by morning everyone has compared bites and compared strategies for relief. Historians still argue whether peasants simply grew accustomed to this nightly battle, or if they dreamed of a day when a good night's sleep meant waking without a single itch. There are remedies, of course. In country villages, people stuff mattresses with aromatic herbs, lavender, mint, wormwood, rosemary, hoping to mask odors and discourage insects. Some families rub their bodies with vinegar or garlic, convinced it makes their blood less appetizing. Ashes from the fire are sprinkled in corners and across bedding, while old wives tell stories about the healing powers of plantain leaves or dandelion sap. Still, even these tricks provide only partial relief. Bedbugs and fleas are stubborn, adaptable, and often too small to be spotted before they strike. An old joke says that the only thing more persistent than a flea is a tax collector, and at least a flea lets you sleep between bites. In cities and towns, the problem is no better, often worse. The crowds, the livestock, the filth of narrow streets all conspire to give vermin a foothold. Wealthy households may try to fight back with luxury, expensive feather mattresses, servants assigned to air and beat the bedding daily, beds draped in fine curtains, but even the grandest bedchamber cannot guarantee relief. Bedbugs burrow into woodwork, fleas leap from pets to pillows, and lice nest in wigs, hats, and even the heavy velvet drapes that symbolize wealth. Servants develop their own tricks. Each morning, bedding is dragged outside and hung from windows or over bushes, exposed to sun and fresh air. Mattresses are beaten with sticks, sometimes so vigorously that they split open, releasing clouds of dust and, inevitably, a few fleeing bugs. There is a special pride in returning to bed after such a cleaning, but the sense of victory rarely lasts more than a few nights. Lice are a plague all their own. They travel from head to head with the ease of a rumour, and nearly every child bears the marks, scratched scalps, chewed collars, little wounds that seem never to heal. Mothers pick nits by firelight, a ritual as old as family itself. In noble houses, a lady's maid may spend hours combing her mistress's hair, her fingers deft, her eyes always searching. Historians still argue whether the ornate medieval headdresses and caps worn by women were primarily fashion, status, or simply an attempt to keep the lice at bay. Some fight back with the razor. Shaving heads is not uncommon, especially during outbreaks of plague or illness. Monks and nuns, with their tonsured heads, escape some of the worst infestations, though the rough wool of their robes and bedding still hides its share of pests. Stories circulate about desperate parents smearing children's hair with goose fat or pitch, then scraping the lice off in great sticky handfuls. Of course, not all pests are so easily discouraged. Rats and mice slip into beds in search of crumbs or warmth. In the countryside, they gnaw at the corners of straw pallets, sometimes startling sleepers with cold noses or twitching tails. Cats, prized for their hunting skills, are welcomed into sleeping quarters, one more bedfellow if a rather fickle one. Some claim that sleeping with a cat will keep mice at bay. Others insist it only makes the bed warmer for everyone. Night after night, the struggle continues. Bedtime routines revolve around pest control as much as comfort. Beds are inspected by candlelight, garments are shaken, and children are warned not to drop crumbs or sweets into the sheets. Some households have special bed brushes, bundles of twigs used to sweep out the worst offenders before sleep. In towns, bathhouses offer the promise of relief, though even the cleanest body can't always fend off the creatures hiding in the bedding. A strange camaraderie develops from this shared hardship. Families swap remedies, servants gossip about which households have the worst infestations, and travellers tell tall tales of beds so infested that the bugs marched in formation across the sheets. One oft-repeated story tells of a tavern so notorious for its fleas that regulars refuse to pay unless the bites are under a dozen. Laughter is a shield. What else can you do, faced with a foe so small and so numerous? There are darker stories too. The link between pests and disease is poorly understood, but many sense that unclean beds can bring sickness. During outbreaks of plague, entire houses are aired, mattresses burned, and bedclothes boiled. Those with nowhere to go must simply endure, wrapping up tightly and hoping the night passes without fever or pain. Amid all this discomfort, some find ways to reclaim a measure of control. Superstition and routine blend into one. Mothers draw crosses in ashes over the head of a child's bed. Fathers mutter prayers to Saint Gertrude, the patron of house cats, and by extension rodent control. Garlic and onions hang by the door, said to ward off both sickness and vermin. The presence of pests shapes the very way people talk about sleep. Expressions abound. Sleep tight, don't let the bedbugs bite, has its roots here. A half-joking wish for a night free from torment. Sleeping like a flea on a dog's back is both a complaint and a badge of resilience. If you dream of lice, expect company, people say, half in jest, half in warning. In noble households the problem is more secretive. Servants are tasked with keeping up appearances, but behind closed doors, even lords and ladies scratch and grumble. Embarrassment is common. No one wishes to be thought dirty or unlucky, yet letters and diaries reveal the truth. Even the finest sheets can hide a multitude of crawling guests. Children, in particular, are philosophical about their bites and scratches. They compare red marks, invent stories about bug battles fought in the dark, and make up songs about fleas too clever to catch. One village rhyme goes, "A flea for my brother, a bug for my bed. May I wake in the morning and find both are dead?" The humour helps, but so does hope. Each spring brings the promise of clean straw, fresh air, and a temporary reprieve from the crawling armies. Families throw open doors and windows, bedding flaps in the wind, and for a few weeks at least, the beds are nearly pest-free. Yet as the wheel of the year turns, the pests return, reminding everyone that, in the Middle Ages, sleep is rarely a solitary adventure. It's a nightly negotiation with nature, where the line between comfort and misery is drawn not by wealth or status, but by the smallest and hungriest of sleeping partners. And so, as you drift off, if you're lucky enough to do so, you wrap your blanket tight, say a silent prayer, and hope that tonight the tiny nightmares show you mercy. Come morning, you will compare bites and remedies, laugh at the latest joke, and as always, prepare for another round in the oldest battle of all. Somewhere, a bell tolls midnight, a lonely, uncertain note that lingers in the rafters. The rest of the house is mostly asleep, but you're wide awake, listening for footsteps in the hall and the soft creak of a floorboard near your door. In the tangled world of medieval beds, where intimacy and necessity have already collapsed the distance between strangers and kin, there remains one more tangle to navigate: the boundaries of gender, class, and the forbidden. Tonight, you catch glimpses of how sleeping across social or gender lines could be both a necessity and a dangerous temptation, a recipe for scandal, confusion, or sometimes quiet rebellion. At first glance, medieval society is obsessed with separation. Laws, customs, and sermons draw firm lines: men and women, rich and poor, free and unfree. Whole treatises are written on the subject. Parish priests thunder from the pulpit about the dangers of immodest proximity. Towns post curfews to keep unlawful persons off the streets at night. But reality, as you soon discover, is far more slippery. In crowded peasant cottages, these rules dissolve in the face of necessity. There's simply not enough room to keep everyone apart, and modesty often gives way to the greater good: warmth, safety, and survival. Husbands and wives, of course, share a bed, but so do their children, grandparents, and sometimes even unrelated lodgers or travelers. Boys and girls sleep in a huddle, with parents forming a human barricade when possible. In larger families, the eldest daughters and sons might be granted a little privacy, an alcove curtained off, a pallet in a corner, but everyone knows these are fragile boundaries at best. Historians still argue whether parents worried as much as later generations about such proximity, or if simple exhaustion rendered them mostly indifferent. Still, as children grow, the tension between custom and reality grows sharper. Adolescent boys and girls are often separated at night, sometimes sent to sleep in different households entirely, apprenticed, fostered, or placed in service. There are warnings about temptation in the dark, and village gossips quick to notice if a certain young woman's bed is moved a little too close to her brother's, or if a farmhand lingers too long in the doorway of the girl's room. It only takes a whisper to start a rumor, and in tight-knit communities reputations are fragile as spiderwebs. In town and city homes, wealthier families try harder to enforce separation. The daughter's chamber is locked and watched by a trusted maid or nurse. Sons are packed off to their own rooms or to the attic with the younger boys. Still, walls are thin and doors are rarely sturdy. Love or mischief has a way of finding a crack. The boundaries aren't just about gender. Social class, too, draws invisible lines through the darkness. A nobleman's son is not meant to share a bed with a serving girl. An apprentice from the city is expected to keep to his own corner in the master's house, not slip into the bed of his master's daughter. The threat of punishment is real, ranging from a beating to public shame, or even expulsion and loss of livelihood. Yet for all the rules, human nature is irrepressible. A village ball, a shared festival, or even the simple loneliness of winter can lead to accidental meetings, hurried whispers, and the risk of discovery. In monasteries and convents, the question of sleeping arrangements is taken especially seriously. Strict rules are set, men on one side, women on the other, novices and elders apart, no one alone with anyone else after dark. Yet the annals of these holy places are full of scandalous stories: monks who sneak into the nuns' quarters, nuns who hide forbidden visitors, lay brothers caught sleeping in the hayloft with the milkmaid. Historians still argue whether these stories are exaggerated, invented by rivals, or a sign that even the most disciplined communities are not immune to the temptations of the night. Servants occupy a curious space in all of this. Their very job is to be near the family, close enough to hear a cry, answer a call, or fetch water in the night. But that proximity means their every movement is watched. The boundaries between servant and master, woman and man, are thin and often fraught. One famous case tells of a wealthy merchant's daughter who ran away with a stable boy after months of secret meeting by the kitchen fire and whispered conversations in the dark. The scandal rocked the town for years, fueling sermons and gossip in equal measure. Sometimes the lines blur for reasons more practical than passionate. During illness, everyone crowds into the same space, rich and poor, male and female, master and servant, drawn together by the need for warmth or care. In winter, during storms or siege, a whole community might shelter in the same hall, propriety tossed aside for survival. Afterwards, the old rules return, but something lingers, a memory of closeness, a knowledge of secrets exchanged when the world was turned upside down. For the privileged, rules are both a shield and a weapon. Accusations of improper sleeping arrangements are used to destroy rivals, smear reputations, or control women's choices. A noble woman accused of letting a man into her room might lose her dowry, her marriage prospects, even her freedom. The very rumor of scandal can alter lives, changing the course of families for generations. But there is also quiet rebellion. Lovers find ways to meet, slipping out after curfew, exchanging tokens, or arranging trysts during festivals when the house is too crowded for anyone to notice a missing body. Songs and stories celebrate such cleverness, even as they warn of the consequences. Historians still argue whether most clandestine couples were ever discovered, or if the true history of forbidden sleep lies buried in silence. Children, for their part, are often oblivious to the boundaries that worry adults. They invent games, share secrets, and claim the best sleeping spots with the fierce logic of the playground. One common game in winter is King of the Covers, where the winner claims the warmest place and the right to boss the others until sunrise. Jokes about sleeping with the enemy abound, meaning of course a younger sibling with cold feet or a grandmother who steals the blankets. In towns, rented rooms blur the lines even further. Poor laborers and apprentices often share beds with strangers. New arrivals in a city might have nowhere to sleep, but in a crowded tavern loft, alongside travelers of both sexes and all stations. For women traveling alone, safety can be precarious. and innkeepers sometimes enforce strict rules, or just as often ignore them for the right price. Night after night, the rules are bent, enforced, or broken, depending on circumstance. Sometimes the very act of sharing a bed across lines of gender or class is an act of defiance or desperation. A servant who braves punishment to comfort a sick child, a girl who sneaks across the room to share a story with her brother, a young couple who risk everything for a few moments together. Each of these is a story that never quite makes it into the records, but lives on in rumor and memory. There are lighter sides too. Feasts, festivals, and special occasions upend the rules. On the eve of a holiday, the whole household may sleep in the great hall together, children sprawled across the floor, servants nodding off in chairs, the master and mistress drowsing by the fire. For a night everyone is equal, just people, huddled against the cold or the fear of the dark. One quirky custom emerges in some towns: bed lotteries, where names are drawn to decide who sleeps where on especially crowded nights. The result is laughter, surprise, and sometimes accidental scandal. An old rhyme warns, "Draw your straw and keep it close, lest you wake up with the wrong bedfellow." Morning always brings its reckoning. Secrets are kept or exposed, jokes traded, lessons learned. Parents remind their children of proper conduct, servants quietly return to their duties, and the old lines reassert themselves until the next night when the world shifts again and the boundaries are redrawn in darkness. As you finally slip into sleep, aware of every shifting body around you, you realize that in the Middle Ages, the rules of the bed are always written in pencil, ready to be erased or rewritten as the needs, fears, and desires of the night demand. For all the sermons and stories, sleep is where humanity asserts itself, tangled and ungovernable, a truth that neither law nor custom can ever quite contain. The candle's wick has burned so low that only a faint orange halo clings to the bed's edge, but sleep still teases just beyond your grasp. The house is quiet now, the day's quarrels faded to memory, yet in the medieval night, beds are not only for sleeping, they're a crucible for secrets, stories, and silent plotting. Tonight, you find yourself half awake, attuned to the murmur of voices all around, realizing that the moments after darkness falls are the time when the truest confidences are whispered, and when more than one destiny may be shaped by a few quiet words. You turn over, careful not to disturb the heavy weight of blankets or the elbow of a nearby sibling. It's in these twilight hours, when the youngest are finally asleep, when the chores are done, when no one expects to rise before the cock crows, that talk blossoms in the dark. It might be a mother and daughter sharing anxieties that daylight keeps at bay, or two brothers scheming about the next day's mischief. In a home where privacy is a myth, and the daylight is full of witnesses, the darkness is a strange and precious gift. There are stories everywhere. In peasant cottages, parents trade worries about the coming harvest or the price of bread, careful to keep their voices low so as not to worry the children. A grandmother, her hair a silver halo against the pillow, might murmur a tale from her own childhood, perhaps of lost loves, cruel winters, or the miracle that brought her through. Children, half awake, drift in and out of the narrative, clinging to words like charms against the unknown. Historians still argue whether the transmission of family lore in bed shaped more lives than the priest's Sunday sermon. In noble houses, the whispers are different, more guarded, often more dangerous. Behind the thick curtains of the great bed, a husband and wife talk softly, their words veiled with caution. Maybe they debate the shifting alliances of the local barons or the intentions of a rival family. Sometimes the talk is sharper. A mistress confides in her lady's maid. A young lord reveals doubts about his own inheritance. Secrets pass like currency, and the servant who overhears something vital may keep it for years, waiting for the right moment to use it. Sometimes the plotting is literal. Older children and apprentices trade gossip and rumors: who was seen in the market with whom, which baker is suspected of cheating his scales, whose daughter is about to be married. In an age where news travels by word of mouth, the bed is both a relay station and a filter, sorting fact from fantasy as stories are retold night after night. Not every secret is so dramatic. The beds of medieval Europe are full of the small confidences that knit people together. A wife confesses her fears about a difficult birth. A son tells his father of dreams to travel far beyond the village. These are moments of trust, delicate, fleeting, and sometimes more precious than gold. Children learn early that the best time to ask for favors, share a forbidden treat, or confess small sins is after dark, when parents are tired and the boundaries between roles blur. A stolen apple, a broken tool, a first crush. All these secrets seem easier to reveal when faces are turned away and only the soft brush of breath betrays that anyone is listening. Some parents feign sleep, letting their children talk out their troubles, quietly storing away each new worry or hope for the coming day. For those in service, the night is also a time for camaraderie and confession. Servants sharing a pallet at the foot of the bed or a straw mat in the kitchen whisper about their employers, trade jokes, and sometimes plot small rebellions. A snatched pastry, a hidden note passed from one household to another. There's a saying among maids, if you want to know a house, listen to the beds, not the bells. The best servants become expert listeners, able to glean meaning from half-heard whispers and the tone of a sigh. Yet, as always, secrets carry risk. The walls, thin as they are, have ears. Many a plot has unraveled because a half-asleep sibling or a shrewd grandmother overheard more than was meant for them. Children, thinking themselves clever, are often surprised by how much their elders know, the price of years spent listening in the dark. Historians still argue whether the famous betrayals chronicled in court records began as careless whispers in the night, or were always destined for daylight exposure. The bed is not only a place for words, but also for silent communication. The squeeze of the hand, a shared glance in the dark, the hush of tears muffled by the blankets. These are the languages of intimacy and trust. Some secrets are kept only by touch, never spoken aloud, passed from generation to generation like a song with no words. On feast days, or during storms when the entire household crowds together in the main room, the night becomes a patchwork of conversations. Some serious, some silly, jokes ripple through the darkness. Tall tales about local monsters, mock plans for running away to join a troupe of minstrels, riddles swapped until everyone's mind is so tangled they fall asleep laughing. Sometimes bed is the only safe place for forbidden love. Lovers meet in the darkness, risking everything for a few whispered words and the warmth of another body. Young women braid messages into their hair, boys press tokens into a beloved's palm beneath the covers. For every discovered tryst, a dozen more remain secrets, carried silently into the morning. The power of these nighttime confidences extends far beyond the bedchamber. Decisions made in whispers can shape a household's fate, whether to join a rebellion, whom to trust, what debts to confess or conceal. Sometimes the confidence given at night is withdrawn by morning, leaving uncertainty and regret. Other times the bond forged in the dark endures, unbreakable even under the harsh scrutiny of day. In many homes this nightly sharing is a source of comfort against a hard world. To speak fears aloud, to laugh together at troubles, is to push back against loneliness and uncertainty. Even the simplest joke, a mother teasing her children about who snored loudest, can soften the sharp edges of hunger or sorrow. Of course, there are those who fear the night. Not every conversation is safe, and not every secret can be trusted. In troubled households, beds become battlegrounds, words are weapons, and the darkness only amplifies tension. Children lie awake, listening for a raised voice, waiting for the day when the secrets finally spill over. Yet even here, resilience grows, a stubborn hope that tomorrow will bring relief or rescue. One curious custom in some regions is the pillow oath, a promise sworn in bed often between siblings or friends, meant to be unbreakable. As long as we sleep under the same roof, goes the saying, our secret is safe. Such oaths are treated with deep seriousness. To break one is considered a kind of betrayal, worse even than lying in court. As dawn finally approaches and the beds begin to stir, the night's confessions drift away like mist. Some will never be spoken of again, others will reappear in the next evening's whispers, polished and retold. The morning brings chores, noise, and the bright light of scrutiny, but for now you hold the comfort of secrets shared and the peculiar power of the bed, as a place where truth, however fleeting, can be spoken without fear. As you slip into sleep, you know you are part of a tradition older than memory, a nighttime symphony of stories, hopes, and confessions, playing on in every house, every bed, every heart. In the medieval world, the day may belong to labor and law, but the night is ruled by whispers and the gentle rustle of secrets under cover of darkness. The hush of midnight deepens, and the air in your crowded medieval bed is thick with more than just the breath of sleeping bodies. Here, under a sagging thatched roof or behind the curtains of a grand carved bedstead, you slip from wakefulness to dreams, and into a world where reality softens and the fantastic presses in. In the Middle Ages, the boundaries between night and day, life and death, the natural and supernatural are as thin as a bedsheet. Tonight you drift through the world of dreams, nightmares, and midnight visions, discovering that the sleep you share with others is haunted by forces both real and imagined. It starts with the ordinary. Sleep comes in waves, heavy and light, disturbed by every sound and movement. The crowded bed is a chorus of snores and sighs, the whisper of straw shifting, the scratch of a mouse in the thatch. But as you surrender to exhaustion, your mind unmoors from the ordinary. You are far from alone in this. Medieval people knew the power of dreams and the terror of nightmares and took them both seriously. In the quiet, you feel the mood change, as a child whimpers in their sleep, chased by a vision only they can see. A mother soothes them with a whispered prayer, fingers tracing a cross in the air. Everyone, it seems, is superstitious about what visits you at night. Dreams are not just entertainment, but messages, warnings, sometimes even prophecies. Historians still argue whether most medieval people truly believed dreams could predict the future. But the old chronicles are full of kings and commoners alike making life-changing decisions based on what they saw with their eyes closed. In noble houses, the lady of the manor might consult her book of dreams, one of many popular medieval texts, full of interpretations for every image. A white horse, a river, a crow, a kiss. Villagers swap advice on dream meanings, passing down folk wisdom and warnings. If you dream of your teeth falling out, beware. It's said to foretell a death in the family. Such beliefs travel from house to house, woven into bedtime stories and morning gossip alike. Some families keep dream diaries, scraps of parchment or wax tablets hidden beneath the bed. A father might wake, pale and trembling, and write down the details of a vision he believes is a warning. A shipwreck, a field of fire, a dark shape at the door. Others dismiss such things, but few dare to ignore them entirely. The world is too uncertain, the night too long, to take chances. Nightmares are a constant companion, and there is little distinction between a bad dream and a supernatural visitation. Children are told of the nightmare, not just a bad feeling, but an actual spirit that sits on your chest and steals your breath. Some say a hag or a witch can ride your dreams, leaving you paralyzed, cold with fear, unable to cry out. The experience is common enough that every family has a remedy: a bowl of water under the bed, a broom propped upside down by the door, a pinch of salt in the four corners of the room. Even the bravest admit to reciting a prayer or two before sleep, just in case. Illness, too, is woven into dreams. Fevers bring visions so vivid that the line between waking and sleeping blurs. People wake gasping, convinced they've seen angels or devils at their bedside. Friends and family watch anxiously, listening to the muttered fragments of dream speech, searching for omens in the ramblings of the sick. Historians still argue whether these fever dreams were understood as illness, or as genuine messages from the other world. Witches and spirits haunt the edges of every bed. A cat that stares too long in the night is suspect. A draught that chills your toes may be blamed on something unseen. In some households, children sleep with iron scissors beneath their pillows, believing they will cut through any enchantment. Girls tie ribbons around their wrists, hoping to keep their souls from wandering too far while they sleep. Not all dreams are nightmares. The best dreams of feasts, lovers, treasures, are cherished and shared in the morning, treated as signs of favor or good fortune to come. Some mothers encourage their children to dream of angels whispering charms or rhymes as they tuck them in. The dream of flying is especially prized, a sign of freedom, spiritual growth, or even coming success. Laughter and jokes keep the fear at bay. Brothers tease sisters about their monster dreams. Children invent stories about friendly ghosts who sneak extra cakes from the kitchen. An old man claims he's visited by his late wife every night just to scold him for snoring. Everyone knows someone who claims to have met a saint or spirit in a dream. These stories pass the time and soften the sharp edges of belief. But there are deeper fears too. Some believe the dead truly walk at night, especially on certain feast days or anniversaries. The souls of the restless or unshriven are said to hover at windows, seeking warmth or forgiveness. People mark these nights by leaving out bread or lighting a candle, hoping to appease whatever wanders. Dogs barking at nothing, the sudden shiver that passes through a room, the feeling of eyes watching in the dark, all these are signs that you are not alone. Waking from such a dream, it takes time to remember where and who you are. You reach for a familiar hand, murmur a reassurance, or simply huddle closer to another body for comfort. In a world where death is always near and the boundary between life and the supernatural is ever thin, the communal bed offers a defense, a way to keep fear at bay by sheer force of togetherness. Still, some dreams are too strange, too powerful to share. They become private burdens, carried silently for days. People visit wise women or priests, hoping for an interpretation or a ritual to erase the memory. There are herbs to burn, amulets to wear, even public processions to drive away the bad spirits. The local priest might sprinkle holy water on every bed or hold a night vigil after an especially bad season of nightmares. The supernatural shapes not only dreams, but the actions of the waking. A man who dreams of a lost friend may travel for days to find them. A woman who sees her wedding in a vision may change her courtship. Convinced it is destiny, skeptics laugh, but they do so quietly. The fear of tempting fate lingers in every home. Night after night, the cycle continues. Dreams give way to worries, worries to rituals, rituals to the deep, honest comfort of a crowded bed. Everyone has their part to play. Parents protect, children believe, elders remember. Historians still argue whether all this belief in dreams was mostly a comfort, or sometimes a burden, but the echoes linger in the morning when stories are retold over bread and milk. As dawn approaches, the world of dreams recedes. The nightmares are forgotten, or at least dulled by daylight and laughter, but some dreams cling, their meanings mulled over all day, their warnings or promises shaping choices in ways big and small. Before you drift into waking, you sense one last strange comfort. In the medieval night, your sleep is never truly your own. It is haunted, hopeful, restless, shared. The dreams you dream belong not just to you but to the household, the community, the ages. The night is alive, and so are you, caught between the mundane and the mysterious, drawing strength from every warm body, every old charm, every whispered story that keeps the darkness at bay. The horizon begins to pale, and somewhere in the distance, a rooster dares to crow. Around you, the household is shifting, coughs and yawns, the creak of floorboards, the slow peeling back of heavy blankets. As you blink away the last remnants of sleep, you feel not just the ache of a cramped night, but the deep invisible threads of connection formed through so many hours pressed close with family, servants, animals, and the echoes of dreams. In the medieval world, waking up together is as rich and ritualized as the long descent into sleep. The first sensations are always physical: numb arms, sore hips, straw poking through linen, someone's cold feet jammed against your calves. You grumble, stretch, and elbow for a little space, but the mood is softer than at night, more forgiving, even a bit amused. There's a universal language of shared discomfort, spoken in eye rolls and playful nudges. You snored loud enough to wake the saints, someone teases, and another groans. At least I didn't steal the covers this time. These small rituals of complaint and laughter are the opening chords of the medieval morning. In peasant homes, the day begins before sunrise. The youngest scramble to be first out of bed, eager for the warmest place by the hearth, as the fire is coaxed back to life. Mothers wrangle groggy children into simple tunics, their fingers nimble with knots and buttons. Fathers pull on boots still damp from yesterday's work, muttering about the weather or the day's chores. Older siblings brush out hair and sweep the floor, shaking out bedding to chase away the worst of the dust, straw, and inevitably bugs. There's pride in getting the house in order before anyone from the village stops by, a sense that the first impressions of the day are built from the ruins of last night's chaos. For the wealthier, mornings are more measured. Servants glide in with bowls of water, helping their masters wash away the night's grime. The ritual of rising is elaborate, changing clothes, combing hair, reciting prayers, and sometimes for the privileged few, a cup of spiced wine or sweetened milk. Children are summoned for lessons, their tutors waiting in chilly chambers with books and slate. In monasteries, bells call the brothers and sisters to the chapel, and the long day's rhythm begins anew. No matter the household, the morning is a time of reconnection. Last night's secrets are sometimes confessed in the gentle light. A child admits to a bad dream, a parent soothes a worry, two siblings make peace after a quarrel. Even servants, who must often keep their distance during the day, may exchange a wink or a whispered joke as they help dress their charges or tidy the room. There are also more public rituals. In towns, neighbours greet each other at doors and wells, trading news of the night. Who slept well? Who saw a ghost or heard the wind rattle the shutters? Historians still argue whether such early morning exchanges built community trust or simply kept the rumour mill turning. But either way, these moments bind the neighbourhood together. Festivals and market days bring whole villages out early, everyone bustling to be first to market or best dressed for the occasion. Children run ahead, chattering about the dreams and stories they'll share with friends. In noble houses, the morning is a time for business. Letters are read, servants bring reports, and household accounts are tallied as the first meal is served. A wife might remind a husband of the promise he made by candlelight. A lord might scold a squire for a broken promise whispered before sleep. Alliances forged or betrayed in the dark come to light in the cool clarity of day. Some mornings are quieter, especially in winter. On the coldest days, the family lingers in bed a little longer, sharing warmth and idle talk. Grandparents tell old stories, mothers hum lullabies, and everyone is grateful for one more hour's rest before the world intrudes. There is a gentle grace in these slow awakenings, a sense that the harshness of medieval life is eased, if only briefly, by the simple comfort of another's presence. As the household scatters, some to the fields, some to workshops, some to school or church, the bed is remade, the blankets folded, and the precious routines of night are tucked away for another day. Yet the marks remain, the indentations in straw, the scent of lavender or smoke, the memory of a hand held in darkness. The rituals of sleep, the rhythms of shared dreaming, echo through every action, a foundation as solid as the stone of the house itself. One quirky morning tradition: in some villages, families save the first story or joke told upon waking, believing that starting the day with laughter or wisdom will keep bad luck away. Children compete for the honor, inventing elaborate tales or riddles, and the winner gets the warmest seat by the fire at breakfast. In noble households, it's sometimes a proverb or prayer, recited while the household gathers for morning chores. Even animals are swept up in the tide of morning. Dogs stretch and shake, ready for work or play. Cats demand a share of the leftover milk. A family pig or cow, if it spent the night indoors, is led out into the yard. The sounds of farm and field rise with the sun, a symphony of new beginnings. With every new day, there is the sense that last night's company, good, bad, or simply peculiar, has knit the household just a little closer. The aches and complaints of a crowded bed are softened by the knowledge that you faced the night together, weathered its storms, and emerged in one piece. Even the smallest kindness, an extra blanket shared, a shoulder offered to a frightened child, a joke whispered in the dark, takes on new weight in the light of morning. As you finish dressing and step outside, the world is transformed. Dew sparkles on grass, smoke rises from chimneys, and voices fill the air. The worries of the night are set aside, replaced by the hopeful energy of a day not yet spent. Still, somewhere beneath your skin you carry the memory of warmth and company, the assurance that when dusk falls again, you will not be alone. Night after night, year after year, this cycle repeats. The medieval bed is a crucible, shaping lives in ways both subtle and profound. It is a school for patience and forgiveness, a sanctuary from fear, a theatre for dreams and dramas, a testament to resilience. Whether in palace or cottage, monastery or inn, the shared bed teaches one essential lesson, that life is not meant to be endured alone, but together. As you gather your things and prepare to meet the day, you offer a silent thanks for the gift of company. Every companion, every pet, every whispered story and shared hardship that made the night bearable, and sometimes even beautiful. You step into the sunlight with the certainty that, no matter how rough the coming hours may be, the bed and those who share it will be waiting when night falls again. As the final rays of moonlight fade and the first birds stir, let yourself relax into this gentle, timeless quiet. You've wandered through halls of laughter and worry, fields of straw and dreams, rooms filled with secrets and warmth. Feel the echoes of 100 sleeping partners, family, friends, animals, even the restless spirits of old, holding you gently in the hush before morning. The hardships, the fears, the midnight jokes, they dissolve, never, replaced by a peaceful knowing that you are always part of something larger than yourself. Let your breathing slow, let your shoulders drop, every muscle softening as you sink deeper into the calm. There's no need to rush, no need to worry about tomorrow. The stories and whispers of the medieval night are still with you, like the softest blanket, wrapping you in comfort and belonging. Soon you'll drift off, and when you wake you'll carry this gentle warmth with you, a memory of ancient nights, a promise of company, a reminder that even in darkness you are never truly alone. Good night, traveller. May your dreams be light, your bed warm, and your heart at ease. Sweet dreams, my dear timeless community.